Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Was Son of Otsutsuki and Momoshiki, the Prince of the Celestial Clan movie. Before we start, please go support Franklin Jr. LeBron for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Chapter 1. This story begins in a remote place in space, or rather, in a solar system made up of 10 gigantic planets, but all dead and dying, just like the sun, which had transformed into a supernova on the verge of exploding and consuming the entire solar system. On one of the planets closest to the sun, a young man with snow-white skin could be seen, along with gray hair with a blue tinge, downward curving horns with a woody tone, and strange eyes with pupils almost identical to the iris, only changed by a slight lavender hue with a pearly glow. He wore a garment the same white as his skin and gray gloves along with a brown belt. It is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain a planet with sufficient vital energy. The voice came from the white-haired man's lips. The voice was noted with anger, and the reason was that he had spent more than 12 centuries consuming these planets of this young solar system of the Andromeda Galaxy in Sector 12 for something that was not worth it to him. These planets have a few thousand years of useful life, which is nothing when absorbed and converted into chakra, especially when the species here are somewhat primitive and new. That only gives them a few thousand deaths to absorb. It's not profitable. The boy put his anger aside with a simple sigh. With that, he stood up from the gigantic gray branch where he was standing, revealing a gigantic city of bricks and with a devastating with thousands of crimson bodies and 4 limbs and thousands more of roots that had buds that were long and totally dry, showing that all the living beings that were imprisoned died. Meanwhile, behind the blond man, a colossal tree more than thousands of kilometers tall and thousands of kilometers in diameter could be seen from even beyond the planet. At the top of this abysmal tree was a completely empty, open purple bud, demonstrating its recent cultivation. "At least I can get out of here now," he whispered tiredly as a green portal opened behind him, allowing a young woman with the same features as the boy to pass through, except she had horns shaped like ears. "I've finished the harvest, sir," the girl said, dropping to one knee and placing her arm on the other, her head bowed, showing respect for the young man who didn't flinch or turn around to acknowledge her presence. "And how much did they grow?" The question was directed at the girl, who raised her head to answer. "The energy of this young star was enough to create fully ripe Shinji fruits, Lord Narashiki." He, now known as Narashiki. Narashiki Otsutsuki smiled cruelly. "Sacrificing a son isn't my thing. But seeing that after millennia I'll finally be able to eat a ripe fruit, we'll be able to say it was totally worth it," he said in his cheerful, grueling voice. "Good, we can go now. We're done here." The girl stood up calmly, but with a doubt she expressed. "Aren't you planning on staying to watch the explosion of the dying star?" "I think it will happen in a few minutes," the girl suggested to the young man, who shook his head. "Narashiki, it's not funny. All the planets have their dead civilizations, and no one will suffer. The fun has completely vanished." The girl understood her lord's point, and opened a worm-shaped portal which the Otsutsuki boy crossed, and later, the girl followed behind him, leaving the portal in the solar system which was already in its last minutes of life along with all its planets and moons. On the other side, Naruto could be seen in a dead world, very similar to where he was before, only here the bodies were of green, chubby beings with a height of 1.40 meters. They were all dead, and a Shinji tree the same size as the one he left behind on the other planet stood with its bud open and just as empty as before. Something that had to be done before leaving the tree. "Narashiki Mari?" "Yes, sir," answered the one now known as Mari or Marashiki Otsutsuki. "Where is Yuma?" "Marashiki. He said he'd be here in a few minutes." "Perhaps he hasn't had all his feasts yet, Lord," he said, bowing his head as he finished. And at that moment a pink portal opened, allowing a girl with the same characteristics to cross the other two. She had 2 horns on her head, only the girl's were larger and darker, giving her a scary air, along with her black lips and aggressive gaze that matched well with her navy blue clothes. Along with her hair, black in the front and gray in the back. "Narashiki, Yuma. Why did you take so long, and where is Boehner?" I asked doubtfully because they also agreed with their third friend in this almost dead place. The girl named Yuma or Yumashiki Otsutsuki smiled at the question and spoke. She told me that if the solar system still has a few more decades to go, she'll have to stay. The Otsutsuki raised an eyebrow in confusion but let it go. Narushiki, it doesn't matter. Their solar system has a lifespan of up to 1 billion years, which is more than enough to create 100 medium-sized ones. He thought the last thing while looking at the planet. Marishiki, so that's it, sir. What will you do now? The boy thought for a moment about the question. I have a question. My father's squad hasn't reported in for over 2 years, ever since they traveled to Sector 1 of the Milky Way. The girls looked at him, and Yumashiki understood. Do you want to go see what happened to him? I never thought you cared about your father beyond his power. Narushiki, you talk like I do, he said indifferently. I need him alive to take his power, and Princess Kaguya hasn't shown up either. If another millennium goes by like this and the princess, or one of the most powerful ones shows up, thousands of Otsutsuki will be sent by the princess, and perhaps to kill the others for possible treason. Yumashiki was surprised. Wait. Princess Kaguya was sent with Lord Momoshiki and Count Ishiki? Why doesn't anyone know about this? She asked doubtfully and in surprise. I don't know. I'm speculating. Princess Kaguya hasn't been named by the Otsutsuki kings since my father left with his squad, and the new one is precisely named Kagura. And it doesn't help that the princess's appearance was never shown by the king, altogether makes me think that it is so. Now that you mention it, Lord. The king seems very upset. Do you think the king ordered the destruction of the Milky Way galaxy? Marishiki asked doubtfully. Narushiki, I don't know. But if that happens, millions of possibly ripe fruits would be lost for nothing. He said thoughtfully, why shouldn't something of that magnitude happen? It would be more loss than gain. Yumashiki, and what should we do? Narushiki thought a little longer before sighing. No other Otsutsuki would take the liberty or trouble to go find another squad. Normally there is no one who can face an Otsutsuki, and even if there was, no one would take the time to see who could defeat or kill the entire squad. Even the one containing one of the most powerful Otsutsuki would be discarded just like that. Narushiki, let's go to the Milky Way, Sector 1. Let's see what happened to my father's squad. Okay, but before we go into where we'll start. Sector 1 has 8 planets and, like, 1 million moons. Any of those moons should have a meeting base, or even worse, they created an alternate universe to have their base. Marishiki, as far as I know, there are no sapient beings other than the Homo sapiens on planet Earth, which is planet number 3 in Sector 1 and, incidentally, has a moon as a natural satellite. I wouldn't create a universe if I had the possibility of having a base a few lands away. Yumashiki sighed, and Narushiki smiled, then placed his hand on the Otsutsuki's head. Well done, Mari! You saved us days of search or destroy time. He said the last part, looking at Yumashiki, who smiled cruelly. Yumashiki, it'd only be a few planets. You wouldn't believe it would destroy the entire solar system. Would you? You said the same thing in Galaxy GSY-8P7 in Sector 2292, and now it no longer exists. That was all he said, when suddenly an explosion rocked in the distance, and the entire planet began to shake, but none of the 3 Otsutsuki flinched in the slightest. And after a few seconds the explosion stopped and the earthquake ceased, allowing everyone to talk again. Narushiki, I had forgotten about that star, he said calmly. At this rate, the Andromeda Galaxy will lose its first 10 sectors, Yumashiki said, looking into the distance at the nebula created by the supernova explosion. That doesn't matter, it's time to go, Marishiki said, and without waiting for a direct order, he opened the portal through which the trio calmly crossed, leaving behind another solar system with several, almost all of its planets dead, drained of life energy. On the other side, we find ourselves in one of the sectors of the Milky Way, or more specifically, in Sector 1 of the Milky Way galaxy. On planet Earth, or rather near its moon, where a portal has opened, allowing the Otsutsuki trio to cross. Good. Yuma, you go to the moon and see if there's a base there. Mari and I will go to planet Earth. We'll arrive when you find something important, he said, earning the girl's approval. He and Marishiki flew off in the direction of the most lively planet in Sector 1. Yumashiki, fine. I'll see you when I'm done, he said, turning around and flying towards Earth's natural satellite. On planet Earth, you could see in the sky two figures falling at maximum speed, creating flames around them that both ignored so as not to suffer any damage or burns from the fire created by the friction of crossing the atmosphere at almost the speed of light. Without slowing down, both Otsutsuki continued flying in no fixed direction until in their sight a large, gigantic ocean covered everything in their sight, except for a good-sized island that had a somewhat modern village in the center. Marashiki, do you think they know anyone from Lord Momoshiki's squadron here? I asked, landing on a wooden bridge with a large sign above it that read, Menma Uzumaki Bridge. Maybe not. Aside from this bridge, this village doesn't seem to have much contact with the rest of the world, he said, starting to walk toward the city, closely followed by the female Otsutsuki. With that, both Otsutsuki entered the city with advanced technology, but they weren't surprised. They've already destroyed other civilizations with equally advanced technology, or even more so than that found in this great city. This planet was barely a civilization with level 0.7 technology. It still needs to harness the energy of its entire solar system. Marashiki, what shall we do, Lord? Walk this way. I have a plan. He spoke indifferently, looking at all the people who entered his sight. He seemed to have a somewhat fixed objective. Until he saw a 28-year-old man wearing a fishmonger's hat, next to him a woman of apparently the same age, her belly swollen, revealing an advanced pregnancy. It was clear the baby was coming. Narashiki approached the potential partner, causing both of them to look at him with apparent doubt. Heedless of their doubts, he continued walking until he was stopped by two gigantic men, almost 20 centimeters taller than Naruto, and with the bodies of bodybuilders who take magic pills. Man 1, you can't just approach Mr. Inari like that, kid, said the man, earning a cold and serious look from the Otsutsuki, while behind him, the man named Inari, seeing the situation, tried to approach to stop the men. Inari, hey, maybe he just wants to talk. In an instant the man was shocked by what had happened. How surprisingly and cruelly, Narashiki opened his eyes, causing a strong breeze to whip the two men apart and mutilate them cruelly. But surprisingly no one else was harmed or killed even as the wind whipped through the entire street. Discomfort, he whispered angrily at the discomfort that was holding him back. Seeing that his discomfort was no longer there, the Otsutsuki continued walking towards Inari, who stood in front of his wife to protect her, but that was something that the Otsutsuki ignored and continued on his way. And upon arriving, floating a little, he placed his hands on the man's head, who felt a headache causing him to fall to the ground when he was released by the white-haired man, rendering him unconscious. Ready, he said calmly. The Otsutsuki walked away from the terrified family, returning to Marashiki, who didn't move an inch. A little further away, 6 young men, 3 girls, and 3 men wearing headscarves with leaf symbols hidden behind them could be seen. Marashiki, will you let them live, Lord? I asked, looking at the corner. That surprised the 6 kids, who were even more shocked and scared. We have to do something, said a boy with dark skin, baggy clothes, and a geeky red cap. He also had a pointed bar on his shoulder. We can't do that. Their skin and eyes don't indicate they're Otsutsuki. It's obvious we'll be roasted meat if we attack, said a man with glasses and a laptop in his hand, looking at a photo of several Otsutsuki, one of whom looked very similar to Narashiki. The geeky boy grunted as a brown-haired, green-clothed girl next to him grunted at her fellow missionary's cowardice. If I'm going to die, at least let it be fighting, the girl said, charging forward. Right behind her, the dark-skinned boy ran to her aid, but neither of them could get very far. A gravitational pull stopped them, and with a flick of the Otsutsuki's hand, the boys flew through some houses. When the thunder stopped, Narashiki had to block a kick from a young man wearing those green spandex and orange leg warmers along with a bowl cut and larger than normal eyebrows. You're strong, he complimented, feeling the blow. But that doesn't mean you can win, he said, slamming the young man's face against his knee, knocking him unconscious. But suddenly he had to jump to dodge a blue blade that he recognized as water? He thought as he noticed that indeed, The sharp blade was water at very high pressure being thrown by a girl with brown hair and 2 pigtails on her head along with her orange clothing. Being distracted by the girl, Narushiki didn't notice the young samurai who was ready to attack him. Drawing her sword, the young samurai launched a blast of blue energy that surprised the Otsutsuki for looking at her. This is chakra. The powerful attack hit Narushiki, causing a loud bang and a swirl of smoke to rise before it. This blocked the young men's view, causing some to smile at her victory, while the samurai fainted from using the technique that consumed all her chakra. Narushiki, it was a good attack. The young men froze at the sight. From the smoke, an intact Narushiki Otsutsuki remained unharmed and appeared unharmed, except for his shirt, which had a cut running from left to right across the back, revealing that he had dealt with the attack directly. It was a good hit. Even though it hadn't hurt him in any way. It was still possible to say the technique was powerful, but only if it were in his hands would it truly be so. Are you finished, sir? Narushiki asked, leaving the flight and landing next to the Otsutsuki Chico. Narushiki, yes. They no longer have a chance to fight. It didn't end when a barrage of rocks fell on the blonde's countertop, who only raised his hand, causing a stone wall to stop the other rocks, which were thrown by the boy in geeky clothes next to the cat girl. They manipulate chakra very well. What did my father and his squad do here? She thought, looking at the boy, who seemed to control an element through chakra. That's why I didn't notice the cat girl, until she had to block a slash from the young woman who this time had the hood on her head and 2 cat ears and 1 cat tail on her head and back respectively made of chakra. They even have something beyond basic control. Who on my father's team made the mistake? He thought seriously as he recklessly punched the girl, who, surprised, fell to the ground. This bastard hits hard, really hard, she said in shock, nearly throwing up her food from the blow. Naruto stared at her blankly at her blow and raised his hand, but again, annoyed, he had to block a wall of water that knocked him away from the cat girl. When he saw it was the one with pigtails, he didn't flinch. Narushiki, not bad, he said, absorbing the water with his right hand. I must say you have some strong abilities, he complimented, surprising and shocking the young people as he finished absorbing the water with a crimson eye in his right palm. The most shocked was the glasses man, because none of his Otsutsuki records showed any of them to be like this. This can't be right. No Otsutsuki is like this because he is. My records are wrong, he thought nervously, because this could mean his records are corrupted or misinformed. But I have to finish now. The bespectacled man was surprised by the last part of the Otsutsuki's words. With that, Narushiki raised a hand, and that initiated the technique. In an instant, it sent the young men crashing to the ground with an absurd gravitational pull. And this was almost killing the young people, and even the boy with glasses was already unconscious because he was the physically weakest among the 6 while the other Aduras Inas were still conscious. Or so it was until a few seconds later, when all the young people were unconscious and nearly dead from the force of gravity. Narushiki continued to stare at them, not caring about their lives, but for no apparent reason, he lowered his hand, leaving everyone unconscious but still alive. This caught the attention of the girl next to him. Won't you finish them off, Lord? I asked with genuine respect and confusion. I don't see the need, Mari. These kids are of no use to me, alive or dead. Doing either is the same thing, after all, she said, trying to float. Let's go. We're done here. Narushiki heard and took flight with Narushiki, quickly leaving the island, leaving 6 young people unconscious, 2 dead, and the village terrified and alarmed by everything that happened in such a short time. Chapter 2. The Otsutsuki duo could be seen flying through a large forest with no apparent target. I still wonder why you let them live, Lord. I'd have nothing to lose by bending gravity and killing them. The white-haired man didn't flinch and continued his flight, just as cold and serious. By fighting the cat girl, I gained information and memories about her, many of them interesting and others not. The bottom line is that I discovered that killing them would put us even further in the already fixed sights of a powerful being. Author: yes, it's Naruto, but not Naruto because Naruto is Narushiki. But he's the Naruto who isn't Naruto in this story. Call him Menma or Jamma. Moai. Momoshiki was interested and surprised. If his lord took someone into account, it's because his power or abilities must be beyond normal. The only time he saw his lord take someone into account was when he fought and slaughtered the Gammarian race, who could increase their power with rage. A race of hulks. How strong is that human? The Otsutsuki wondered with some concern at her lord and friend of centuries. And where are we headed, lord? Narushiki, Kanahagakur, which is located in the Land of Fire, about 150 kilometers away, he said, flying a little faster than normal. Momoshiki, Kanahagakur? Yes. That's the name of the village we're headed to, he said, causing a nod in Momoshiki. With that, both Otsutsuki stopped talking to accelerate their speed to lightning speeds, causing them to come to see a village surrounded by forests in a few seconds of travel. The village was enormous, about 55 kilometers in length, front and back. And thousands of square kilometers, if I'm counting correctly, and that's not even counting all the buildings behind the seven-sided mountain carved in stone. That's the village, the girl said, a little surprised. Hearing village, she'd expect a few hundred square kilometers and at least 20 kilometers from point A to point B, not thousands of square kilometers. Narushiki, maybe they don't know the term city. Or simply changing the name from Leaf Village to Leaf City would be too much trouble for something as insignificant as this, he said, landing near the village, and faithfully his Momoshiki side did the same. Now we will walk, he said as he started walking to the village, where the first gate was 20 kilometers away, so anyone could probably even notice his walking figures. And taking advantage of the time, the Otsutsuki began to do hand poses, which, for the girl next to him, were senseless, stupid and silly, not to mention ridiculous. And did he already say silly and stupid? Why do you have fingers, sir? He said, leaving aside the issue of the silliness of the poses. If his lord did it, he had a particular reason for it. Narushiki, in the girl's memories I saw this, he said, posing again, but this time faster and more carefully. It seems these humans here use chakra to do things like transform into other people. That'll help us get into the village and grab something. After that we'll leave, he said, finishing 24 hand seals, causing him to end up covered in a curtain of white smoke. The Otsutsuki still looked like a 16-year-old teenager. Only his skin now had a more human color, but still with that royal delicacy that characterized him. His previously bluish-white hair was now a short, dark brown. Her royal Otsutsuki robes had changed to a seemingly white battle kimono with protective forearms. The only thing left intact in her former appearance were her lavender-hued eyes, which bore the pearly glow of her family's future Byakugan. It doesn't seem that difficult to do, he said, looking at his hand and the color of his skin, which he didn't like, a humiliation for an Otsutsuki. Although more than a physical change, it seems like a kind of chakra layer over me that acts as a cloak to create an illusion, he said, casually deciphering the technique. Something he normally does, even with Shinjutsu. Momoshiki, the appearance suits you, sir. You chose well, he said respectfully, pushing away the boy who had done nothing. Narushiki, thanks. Did you learn the seals? Yes, sir, he nodded. The Otsutsuki nodded to the girl to look in the direction of the Leaf Village, and with the pulse of chakra the veins around his eyes swelled, being noticeable to the naked eye, and his vision changed to 359 degrees and 20 kilometers away. Momoshiki, sir? Your eyes are still the same, won't they recognize us from that? I asked respectfully while still practicing the hand positions to get it done. Narushiki, no. Don't worry. From what I saw, there's a clan with our clan's dojutsu as a bloodline, similar to us but obviously inferior, he said, looking at the village as if he were seeing something beyond the gate in the distance. And it wasn't a lie. How is that possible? We've never found anything similar to us in the entire universe, because they are? I asked, genuinely amazed. I hadn't expected anything like this in their millennia of age. This planet was certainly more interesting than the others. Narushiki, I think this is the work of my father's squad. Someone must have interbred with them, and these 2,000 years must have been more than enough to spread all their blood among these half-breeds. He sighed, a phantom pain in his head. This would be a disaster for the clan when it gets out, and whoever did this would be punished mortally, no matter their position. I only hope Kaguya-sama wasn't the one to blame, otherwise this would be more than enough for the first two kings to accuse the third king of negligence. The Otsutsuki only decided to leave that for later because of the smoke explosion that occurred next to him, and, when it cleared, he saw Momoshiki with a new person. Now in position was a light-skinned but human girl. Her hair was still the same length, but brown and tied in a braid that rested on her right shoulder in the front. The change had also taken place in her clothing. Her white kimonos had transformed into black combat clothes with a natural elasticity for combat, but like Narushiki, her eyes were white with a hint of lavender and the pearly glow of the Byakugan. "How it looks on me, I spent a bit thinking about it," Momoshiki said with a smile as she looked at her new look, which she thought was fine with the characteristics of this world. The brown-haired man smiled in a kind but very discreet way. "It suits you. Although very human, but your beauty is intact." He thought the last thing as he turned and saw the door about 209 meters away. "To complete the infiltration, you will call yourself Mari and call me Naruto. Don't ask why I eat food," he said, causing the girl to laugh. "And don't call me Lord. You know I can't do the latter. You are the prince of the Otsutsuki clan, the most promising and powerful young Otsutsuki of our generation." The boy just snorted at everything that was shit to him. He honestly didn't care about being the most powerful and promising Otsutsuki in less than 5 millennia, since after all that wouldn't help him eat planets. "Fine, refrain from calling me that only when we're in private." "As you wish, Naruto-sama," he said, reaching the door and looking at both guards, who fell unconscious on the tables, giving the two young men free passage. Unrestricted, the two wandered around the village, with Mari secretly happy to be out of the ordinary with her lord. Since it wasn't absorbing planets or destroying galaxies but rather searching for good planets to harvest, it was nice to have a bit of quieter time every now and then. "Narushiki, what are you thinking, Mari?" asked Naruto, causing the girl to come back to her senses. "You're welcome, Naruto-sama. Plus," he said respectfully. But then curiosity crept in. "Why do you ask, Naruto-sama?" The brown-haired man shrugged. "Nothing special," he said calmly. "Just that you took my hand a few minutes ago." At the boy's words, Mari hurriedly let go of Naruto's hand. This brought a smile to the prince's face, but he still kept his face serious and cold. "I'm sorry, Naruto-sama," he said with embarrassment on his face. The brown-haired man just let it go. "It doesn't matter. We've been friends for ages. This is nothing." The boy's words were cut short when he had to do a backflip on his hands and knees, faced with a stone spike that emerged from the ground where he'd been standing, clearly intent on killing him on contact. "They've noticed we're here," he thought seriously. At that moment, purple rays shaped like arrows shot toward Ivan, but he effortlessly absorbed them with his yellow eyes, circles around the pupils that opened in his left palm. "These humans!" He thought, annoyed when he saw a kind of white wolf with black lines running towards him, but without compassion he raised his hand where his Rinnegan turned purple and causing a pressure of gravity to crush the wolf against the ground without any mercy. An animal? He thought with doubt because clearly the attack was not launched by the animal. But he put that aside to dodge a kick from behind him, and without hesitation, he took his foot and slammed it against the ground, revealing a blonde girl wearing black clothes, boots of the same color that reached her thighs, and very long, messy hair, this being the daughter of Inuzuka Kiba and a civilian woman. The blonde raised his right hand so that the lightning arrows he had previously absorbed would reappear. He was going to shoot but had to stop to block a pillar that was thrown towards him, but without problems he only blocked it with his hands, but in that interval of time the blonde was taken away from the brown-haired man. "So these are the kunoichi. Not bad for mortals," he thought, blocking a punch that buried him in the ground even though it didn't cause any damage. The ground was half faster than the Otsutsuki in this short duel of strength. This blow came from a blonde woman who appeared to be 16 or 17 years old. Her clothes were casual, a short black jacket and cream pants that reached below her knees, along with white heels and a strange diamond shape on her head. This woman was Mito Senju, daughter of Jiraiya and Tsunade of the Sannin. Naruto didn't even care about the girl, and with a strong grip he held the Senju's head and buried it next to the position in the ground. Standing up from the crater that the girl's blow created, he looked at the blonde buried in her own crater by his blow, although he could see that she was fine and trying to stand up, but the blonde didn't let her as he tightly grabbed her po and threw her against a nearby store, sending several more businesses to be destroyed in the distance. These humans are as interesting as they are annoying. I can see why Dad had trouble with them. They're good at physical combat. The weakness of the useless. He thought as, now more irritated, he blocked a blast of fire that he absorbed with his golden Rinnegan. Once free, he saw that the attack came from a black-haired girl with red eyes, carrying 3 tomos. Her clothing consisted of a black sleeveless shirt, short pants of the same color, and super long black stockings. She had some sort of tight purple leg warmers on her waist and arms, and bandages on her ankles. Her hair was tied in a messy ponytail. This was Mikoto Uchiha, one of the last Uchiha and daughter of Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Harino, both from the greatest and strongest generation of Konoha and twin sister of Sarada Uchiha, although Mikoto is older by a few minutes. Those eyes look familiar, he thought, recalling the tomos in Urashiki's eyes a few times. Naruto, so they have more than just a Byakugan. I should have reviewed those memories better before coming here, he thought as he blocked a kick from the apparently 13-year-old girl, and with a simple twist, the girl was already crashing into the wall. And pointing his hands, the ray technique appeared again, but instead of the girl he pointed it towards a group of officers who came with a device on their wrist to attack him. Commander, all katan towards the target. The order was obeyed and everyone launched a burst of fire at the Otsutsuki, who did not flinch and launched a lightning bolt towards the commander of the police forces. Unable to react, he took it head-on and fell with mild electric shocks, receiving the electric shock right in the front of his brain. Seeing that it was going to kill him if he didn't do something, the blonde woman with the wolf stood ready for battle. Well, I'm tired. Shinjutsu, lava golem, he said angrily, raising his hand. But he had to stop when a giant clawed hand tried to grab him, but he easily dodged it, moving away from the girl in the process. When he looked up, he could see a blonde man with long hair reaching down to his neck and a white cape with red flames underneath, along with some kanji with the word 7th written on the back in bright red. Seeing him, he became serious. Mari, we're leaving for now, he said to the girl, who was about to head toward her lord to help him, but stopped when she had to block a strong kick from a dark-haired man wearing a full black cape, one eye covered by his hair, the other crimson red. Mari left the house, where she was sent flying by the dark-haired man with red eyes and 3 tomos like Mikoto's. I don't know you, and I don't like you, said the female Otsutsuki, looking at the adult, who appeared to be in his 30s, in a serious manner. Elsewhere, the male Otsutsuki was looking at the person he wanted to avoid for various reasons. Menma Uzumaki, Ashura Otsutsuki's sole transmigrant and the 7th Hokage of the Leaf Village, and also the one who, along with the black-haired man named Sasuke Uchiha, murdered and executed his father. Menma, what are you doing here, Otsutsuki? The question made the Otsutsuki smile sadistically. With that, the transformation broke, and his appearance was revealed, surprising the Uzumaki with its similarity to the person he reminded him of. Momoshiki. The white-haired man raised an eyebrow but smiled again. So it's true. You met and defeated my father, and I thought it was just a girl's daydream, though it's not much. He was a useless fool after all, she said with a sigh. You know, sometimes it's hard to differentiate a dream from a memory, so it's better to take the time to differentiate between the two instead of taking everything in. But it was a struggle. I didn't have any other options, he said, looking at the surprised Hokage while the blonde wondered who he took those memories from. It must have been some traveler. After all, he was not known for anything. Menma, you're Momoshiki's son. More than a question, it was a statement. What are you looking for here? He asked seriously, his eyes flickering between a clear blue and a gold with a cross in the middle, a shape that Naruto could tell was his maximum power. Marashiki, we are looking for our people who came here thousands of years ago. Well, they came in vain. They're all gone now. Narashiki looked at the dark-haired man whose name he knew was Sasuke Uchiha, the sole transmigrant of Indra Otsutsuki and the self-proclaimed shadow that protects the village. How are you so sure, human? He said seriously. This man reminded him of one of his father's squadrons, due to his demeanor. Sasuke, everyone has been eliminated. Kagaya, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and Urashiki have already been defeated or killed by the two of us. Defeated or dead? Some were just defeated, while the others were dead. He thought, because it made sense to him, but then he noticed something. Kagaya, my father, grandpa, and that idiot Urashiki. He thought, remembering the order in which she mentioned them. It seems they're not keeping track. My father's squad was made up of 6 Otsutsuki, not 4. And they always travel in teams of 2. That surprised both adults. What do you mean? The blonde asked very seriously. I say that 2 of my father's squadrons got away. Although it's probably just 1, since it's been a while and I haven't seen the 6th. The 2 adults looked at each other. Speak. What do you want to change about your information? Narashiki smiled wickedly. What I want is something that will save your planet, and save me food. So I think we win. Tell me where Princess Kagaya is, and I'll tell you all about the last Otsutsuki from my father's squad. Chapter 3. Narashiki could be seen sitting quietly in the Hokage's office, while in front of him were Menma and Sasuke alike, and Mari was waiting patiently outside the door. The white-haired man had just told him everything he knew about Ishiki Otsutsuki. Last member of the squadron in charge of absorbing the planets of the Milky Way galaxy in sectors 1, 10 and 209. The 2 adults were analyzing and processing what the Otsutsuki in front of them had said. For them, there were things that were surprising and new, but not much either. Like the fact that Kagaya is a true princess of the Otsutsuki clan, and it wasn't just a nickname given by herself, and that she was the daughter of one of the 3rd kings of said clan who divided the planet of the Otsutsuki, and also the dominated sectors. Another era saw a more powerful Otsutsuki than her, and it was her teammate, Ishiki Otsutsuki. From what the boy said, he was more into speed and strength than destructive attacks or multiple abilities, but he had a dojutsu. A unique dojutsu that allowed him to shrink non-organic matter to a molecular level and trap it in some timeless dimension that he could completely control. Menma, if he really is more powerful than Kagaya, why hasn't he appeared until now? His entire squad has been massacred and sealed, and he doesn't show up. Doesn't he care? The Uzumaki asked the Otsutsuki, who thought for a second without really thinking. He didn't know the reason in truth. Well, the boy shrugged. Narashiki, normally I would say that he is in some other solar system absorbing, and that is why he has not found out. Normally absorbing a planet with all its deaths and souls takes more than 1,000 years. But seeing that Kagaya-sama has been sealed and she was her duo, my only option is to think that he died. But if you did not kill him, it must have been Kagaya herself. My question is why? Menma looked at Narashiki with doubt and a bit of interest. So you're saying Kagaya killed her partner? Did she have a reason for that? Sasuke thought until something came to his mind. You said the weaker of the duo sacrificed himself to the Jubi to create the Shinju, didn't you? Menma, do you have something? I asked, stopping thinking to look at the Uchiha. Sasuke, I think so. He answered to speak. From what Black Setsu told us, Kagaya, while watching the tree so that it would consume the planet, mixed with a nearby village, and there she became pregnant with the Rakuta Sanin's father. Maybe that Ishiki was upset about getting pregnant, or Kagaya killed him so that he wouldn't absorb the earth. Since from what we know, she also stopped the absorption of the Jubi prematurely. Narashiki listened quietly and sighed wearily. He hadn't even spoken a single word of what he heard, and he could already feel the king, Kagaya's father, calling him a liar, or the other 2 wanting to blame the former for their daughter's actions. It was all really stupid, and even worse when it was for nothing. Narashiki, tedious. It would have been better to leave and not come here. Especially since my father died and neither of these 2 seemed to have earned their karma. Maybe he didn't even leave any karma. After all, he is an idiot. He thought angrily at his stupid father who, as always, was of no use to him. Menma, your theory is sound though, Sasuke. You have to remember the stone with the horns you found. Didn't you say there was a Jubi and a person with red marks on their body? Those red marks interested the Otsutsuki, who turned to look, leaving his complaints for later. What were those marks like? He asked, interested, while Sasuke, as the suspicious one of the duo, looked carefully at the Otsutsuki's sudden interest. Sasuke, they're more black than red marks, he said, thinking about the information to say. They only give a red flash when you look at them for a few moments. Then they are like lines that create a pattern on the arms and face, just like Boruto and Kawaki's. He finished to look at the Otsutsuki, who smiled. Narushiki smiled at the words. Just like Boruto and Kawaki. That description was about karma, and if those two the Uchiha mentioned have karma, there's a chance it's their father. Or there's also the possibility that they're Urashiki and Kinshiki. But he gave more to his father. If they really defeated his father, that means that either they killed his grandfather quickly, making him leave no karma, or they killed his father after absorbing his grandfather, making his karma disappear by ceasing to exist. Sasuke, now that you mention it, that person with the marks had a horn similar to the one that was on top of Kagaya's, he said, becoming serious because the horn came out next to karma, something that didn't give him a good feeling. Narushiki became serious because of that. If he talked about Ishiki, it would be a problem. Really, seeing all the shit that happened here and seeing that Kagaya had possibly tried to kill her technically superior, she decided that it was better that they all died and that Kagaya would return alone, without witnesses to start a fight. And a mental eraser on the princess who only remembers that after arriving on Earth, she was simply tried or forced to sacrifice herself for Ishiki. And since she was a princess, Ishiki will be considered a traitor, nothing important. I don't want to alarm you, but those horns belong to Ishiki. He probably planted karma before dying at Kagaya's hands, and that human is doing his bidding, he said, and both adults looked at him seriously, causing him to shrug, paying no attention to their looks. Are you sure about that? The Uzumaki asked with his hands crossed. Menma really didn't want what he said to be true. It would clearly be a problem worse than the Shinobi War if the man were to awaken in his karma with all that power, the young Otsutsuki told him. The white-haired man nodded. If he's above Kagaya's group, it means he's her superior and also her duo. And that's Ishiki. So he's obviously alive, or at least he hasn't disappeared from existence as we thought. Menma, and what will you do about it? He said, because the boy possibly also wanted to take him and Kagaya back with him. Something that could avoid battles and deaths. Narushiki smiled cruelly. As far as I'm concerned, my father, grandfather, Urashiki, and Ishiki all died at the hands of you two. Kagaya was fortunately sealed and managed to survive until I arrived, freed her, and returned her to the clan, he said sadistically, grinning like a madman. Both shinobi really didn't expect this. It surprised them, but seeing that Momoshiki absorbed and technically killed his father to gain a slight bonus without hesitation. They could say that they had no affection for others if they didn't have it for their own family, as the boy in front of them demonstrated. We'll make a deal. You won't tell me where Kagaya is for another 4 years. During this time, I'll help you search for Ishiki, and I'll even help you eliminate him if the opportunity arises, he said, smiling skillfully. This was something neither of the humans would refuse, as he couldn't betray them for Kagaya's information, so he would be loyal until the last second of their deal. Menma, no. Huh! The boy said, impressed. He didn't expect that response. They really thought they could defeat Ishiki. Even he had his doubts about being able to beat him. And these humans thought they could do it alone. Stupid. Menma, we dealt with Kagaya. We can deal with Ishiki. We don't need anyone else's help, he said seriously, trusting in Otsutsuki would be the last thing he would do in his life. Those beings by nature were simply crazy about destroying solar systems or even galaxies and universes for pleasure, so trusting them would not happen in his life. Naruto looked at him and smiled. It's not a request, Hokage Dano. It's simpler, either you accept or I destroy you. With that, a chakra pulse came out of the Otsutsuki that put both adults on alert. But as Narushiki didn't make any more movement, they shrank and took the action as a threat of power, something that neither feared, and Sasuke showed his sword. Until after a few minutes a call came into Menma's laptop, and when the Hokage answered, a scream was the first thing to respond, a desperate scream. Lord Seventh, it's happening again! Menma's face went blank. He couldn't understand all the shouting. The moon is approaching the planet again, and this time at twice the speed. At the screams, the Uzumaki put down his laptop and looked at the Otsutsuki, very serious now, once again threatening to devastate the planet with the moon. How did he do it? I don't see the Tensigen in his eyes, much less a giant Tensigen. There's no way he could move the moon. He thought seriously, looking at the boy who had Sasuke's sword at his throat, but even if he was calm and just as cold. Something that, like with Momoshiki, gave him a bad vibe, but this time it was worse. Not even the Otsutsuki girl had entered. She was still outside, making it clear that the Otsutsuki was not threatened and that everything had been in her hands from the beginning. Sasuke, stop this or I'll cut your throat. Fine. We'll do what you say. Menma interrupted Sasuke, accepting the white-haired man who smiled sadistically. Narushiki just smiled arrogantly at his victory in that election, because this was his victory in the bargain and something he liked, winning. With that, another chakra pulse came out, and from what the incoming call told him, yes, it passed. The moon stopped again. Narushiki, fine. I'll go. I'll be in your village until the 4-year period is up, he said calmly, mentioning the sum of 4 years as if it were a day, a lifetime that was nothing to a being of the Celestial clan. It's fine, I don't expect any trouble, Menma whispered. And without really taking it into account, upon leaving the room he saw Mari still in her delusion, which confused him. Why are you still like this? It's no longer necessary. The girl blushed at the doubtful sight of her cord, a sight she liked even though she wouldn't say it out loud. Well, I feel comfortable with this appearance around here. I think I'll last a few more days like this, Naruto-sama, the girl said, calling him by the name he requested. You don't need to call me that anymore. You can continue calling me Lord or Narushiki. It doesn't matter, he said calmly, starting to leave the tower with Mari behind him. Whatever you say. Narushiki-sama. The boy stopped in his tracks the instant he heard the words. Did something happen, Narushiki-sama? He asked worriedly. Narushiki, you called me no. Nothing, forget it, he said, continuing on his way with the girl until he left the great tower and reached the main road of the Leaf Village. Along this road, many people and children were playing, something that Narushiki watched with interest, because on his planet, seeing more than 5 children on the same street was simply amazing. The Otsutsuki, while looking sideways and distractedly walking among the children, collided with someone, but remained like a rock while the girl, who was an adult, fell under the Otsutsuki's gaze. Hey, watch where you're going, the adult, who appeared to be 34 years old, said angrily. The woman was a light-skinned redhead, wearing long black shinobi sandals that reached below her knees. Underneath the sandals were light gray stockings that reached her thighs. She had red shorts on and a black dress over them. Her shirt was gray, as were the stockings, and she had black leg warmers on both arms. Her hair was also in a bun, and she had bangs in the front. The Otsutsuki, not caring about the fall, continued on his way around the girl, or at least that's what he was going to do, when the girl on the ground, annoyed, swept the Otsutsuki's feet, who didn't move an inch due to the adult's super-strong sweep. The boy looked at her with his cold face, causing the woman to be scared and surprised when, doing a double backflip, she ended up in front of the Otsutsuki, super serious. You're that Otsutsuki, she said angrily as the kunai began to burst into flames and turn bright red. But even so, the boy didn't flinch or move from the threat. When he was about to attack on impulse, Narushiki reacted first, as if nothing had happened, and held his kunai hand before blocking him. Sitting on the woman's chest, he placed the kunai next to his hand on the ground. At that moment, more than 10 masked shinobi appeared around the white-haired man, and the crowd was alarmed by the situation and the boy's skin and eyes, which reminded them so much of the one who had kidnapped their Hokage a year ago. You should know who you're attacking. For the next 4 years, I'm your ally, not an enemy. After that, you can worry about me. Now just take advantage of the fact that you have me, he said loudly, causing everyone to hear him and many to become confused. But the Anbus, who Narushiki knows were in the Hokage's room, lowered their swords. Leaving the woman, the white-haired man stood up and released the kunai, which landed on a point. Come on, Mari. We have to see what Yuma discovered, he said, opening a blue portal, and both Otsutsuki crossed it, leaving the Konoha commercial area in disarray. On the other side, Narushiki and Mari could be seen in space near the moon, which was surprisingly split in half as if it had been cut. Wow, they split it in half, she said in surprise. She'd seen more incredible things, but this was still incredible. Narushiki. Looks like there was an intense battle here, he said, noticing a massive crater and further away, a badly destroyed wall and the shape of a nailed figure, showing that someone was forced there. This way, he said, looking at a circular hole in the moon. Upon falling, both Otsutsuki found themselves in a kind of space where there were many strange crystals among the rocks. They both flew through the place and descended toward the large circle below, which seemed to be cast by a gigantic sphere. Upon descending completely, they now found themselves in a wide, empty space, where there were floating islands and a castle far in the distance. Narushiki, it must be there, he said as he began to fly at high speed and reach the entrance of the great castle, which now, up close, was super big. But leaving that aside, he looked at Narushiki at his side, and when he opened the door, they found a gigantic mess. Puppets were destroyed everywhere, walls, furniture, and objects were broken or thrown, as if a pitched battle had been fought inside. It seems there was a fight here, and it seems it was one-sided, he said, just seeing the bodies of the puppets that had been annihilated. It must have been humans, the Otsutsuki said without interest, twirling a strand of hair, confusing Narushiki a little. But he let it go because it wasn't very important. Both of them entered the destroyed castle without permission, which didn't matter to him, and after crossing a few corridors, they both arrived at a large door, a door almost as large as the wall itself. Upon opening it, they saw Yumashiki reading several books next to a pile of books on his right, and on his left, there was something that Yumashiki would compare to some kind of ghost or spirit, but the blonde looked at it closely and instantly noticed what it was. Narushiki, he was sealed. Surely Urashiki, he was the best at it, he said looking at the man. Who are you? He said, drawing the attention of Yumashiki and the stranger. You must be Yumashiki-san's squad, right? Welcome, he said, ignoring the question. Answer the question, Narushiki repeated, approaching Yuma and the ghost. He began to look around at the hundreds of thousands of books. Did any of them have good shinjutsu? He doubted it, but he was still interested. Pardon my manners. My name is Tonari Otsutsuki, last Otsutsuki of the moon, she said with her eyes closed, bowing to Naruto, who ignored her. I imagine you're a descendant of Kaguya. Right. Tonari, you're correct. I'm a descendant of Homura Otsutsuki, the youngest son of Princess Kaguya, he said respectfully, questioning the white-haired man. Narushiki, so you know about Kaguya-sama's position in our clan? I ask because apparently no one knew about that on Earth, or they only gave it to refer to the Otsutsuki of the planet Earth or the moon. Tonari nodded. I only just found out from Yumashiki-san, but she was already revered as the matriarch of our own clan. Narushiki nodded without interest. Because they sealed you, and who? He asked and ordered. It was one of us who sealed me with a fishing rod. And he sealed me for interfering in something I shouldn't have, but it was necessary, he said formally and without any importance, since in this seal, he was an immortal with no apparent way out. Okay. Does that have to do with Boruto? He said and noticed the Semi-Otsutsuki's reaction. He didn't know this Boruto, but the book that listed his name and several maps told him the man knew him, or at least was watching him for a reason. What did you interfere with? He asked. This time totally serious, causing a heavy atmosphere over the whole room, but both Yumashiki and Narushiki held it well and Tonari was just nervous and that was what the boy wanted. Tonari forced the awakening of a dojutsu in the boy, the Jugen to be more precise, he said, and Naruto looked at him with an eyebrow raised in doubt. For what reason? I asked seriously. It was necessary. Dangers were approaching, and he wasn't ready yet. Narushiki, we're the dangers. But the one who will help him is the Jugen. No one knows anything about it. The only thing known about the eye is that it belongs to the god Otsutsuki. And we don't even know if the dojutsu was actually useful to him. Maybe the Jugen is just a glowing eye and nothing more. So why risk something like that? The question made Tonari stop. It was really stupid to bet everything on eyes he knew nothing about other than their own appearance, and that they glowed. He knew from Boruto that Sharigan could see chakra even when it was invisible and had great foresight, but nothing more. He just hoped he was truly powerful, or his now eternal confinement wouldn't be worth it. Don't know. Naruto listened to the response and said nothing. He must have been desperate if he acted only because they were sure by Sama's eyes. But it was clear that it would happen. After all, it was my dad's squad. Okay. Yuma. Do you have anything I don't know? I asked the studious, rebellious Otsutsuki. I don't know what you know, idiot, but I discovered that humans have chakra, our clan mixed with humans, and there are a few clans with our blood. Also, Kaguya-sama is sealed. There is a man named Menma Uzumaki who is very dangerous, and lastly, the entire squad of your step is dead, she said calmly. Narashiki, I knew all that. So it was pointless reading all this? What a waste of time, the girl said, annoyed. You know something important about Boruto. The boy is the son of the 7th Hokage. Yumashiki nodded. He has karma, and judging by his characteristics, it's Lord Momoshiki's. There's also someone else with karma, and apparently it's Lord Ishiki's. You knew that too, didn't you? Naruto nodded. I had doubts, but you confirmed it. Thank you. The plan will be to stay here for 4 short years to take care of Ishiki, wait for my father to reincarnate as the boy and devour him, and take Kaguya as the only survivor of the squad. That way, no one will know we mixed with humans, and a war won't break out and destroy everything. Yumashiki, that plan sounds good to me. Especially if we're going to face Ishiki. That way we'll prove that we're better, he said, clapping his palm with his pulse in encouragement, while Mari, in her Otsutsuki appearance, just smiled next to Narashiki. Chapter 4. We found ourselves on the moon, where Narashiki was still with her squad. At her side, Marashiki, who had her human appearance for a reason Narashiki didn't know, remained as her assistant, as she always did. Did you understand the plan? He asked Yumashiki, who smiled and nodded wildly. Yuma, of course. Besides, it's easy, we have more than 2 decades before Banner comes with us, he said happily. Facing someone of Ishiki's caliber would be exceptional. He simply loved fighting, and fighting someone of royal standing was incredible, even though it would be a betrayal of the clan. If Ishiki didn't survive, there was no proof. Narashiki, fine. Mari and I will return to planet Earth. You will stay here with the blind man, he said, pointing at Tonari, not caring about the insult to the half-breed of his clan. Investigate as much history as possible to find out how things happened and see what might help us, he said as he turned to leave. Marashiki and her human guys came out behind him and followed by his side until they left the castle. Opening a portal, Narashiki crossed it, and when he saw the other side, he was falling from the sky carefree, until a large ball of fire headed towards him spontaneously. Something that surprised him a little, but he put it aside to act. Attack? No coincidence, he thought as he fell and stretched out his hand where his golden Rinnegan appeared, slowly absorbing the flames of the fireball in an instant. Finishing falling, he found himself in a training field like most of Konoha, where he could see the nature damaged by fire, something that helped him know that the fireball thrown at him was not for him, but from a training. Hey you! Naruto turned around as he saw a silhouette approaching from behind. Why did you absorb my fireball? Wait! Are you that Otsutsuki? Shouted angrily the girl that Narashiki recognized as the young woman from a few minutes ago whom he sent into some stores. The daughter of the powerful Sasuke Uchiha. Narashiki, it was coming towards me, he replied without interest as he clenched his palm to feel the power of the fireball in his chest. The Uchiha girl looked at him angrily, not caring about the answer the Otsutsuki gave her. Now her body didn't hurt from the blow that sent half of Konoha flying, from the civil district to the military district. Makoto, get out of my training camp now, he said, looking at the Otsutsuki in a bad way and then going back to training, hoping that the boy would listen to him. The Otsutsuki ignored it, since seeing the girl's techniques interested him. Perhaps he could learn them for his own benefit in battle. With a large arsenal, he could gain more power and an advantage over Ishiki or his potential allies. "Didn't you hear? I said get out. Don't give me orders, human. You have no power over me," Narushiki said indifferently as he hovered slightly above the ground. At the same time, Mari fell from the portal in the sky that had closed due to its deactivation. Narushiki-sama, what are you doing here?" "You can go see the village, I'll stay here," she said, interrupting his conversation. While she was confused, I looked at her lord's words with doubt, also due to the suddenness of this. "Mari, why so sudden, Narushiki-sama?" "Narushiki, I won't be doing anything for a long time. I don't want to keep you here just waiting for me," she said to the young man, who nodded. She also wanted to see the village, since although she had seen many advanced civilizations, seeing one that uses chakra might be different. With that in mind, the brown-haired girl flew off towards the village, leaving the Otsutsuki and the Uchiha behind. When she realized she was left behind, she looked at him angrily. Deciding to ignore him, the girl continued her training, which consisted of basic things, walking on water or using some academy techniques a few times, nothing that would impress the Otsutsuki, who openly demonstrated it. Pathetic. Mikoto listened with a frown at the words the Otsutsuki said behind her. "You guys put in so much effort for nothing. With over 20 years of training, you're no more powerful than an Otsutsuki in their childhood. So why put in so much effort and you'll be weak?" The girl got angry at this. "Shut the buck up, will you? Just because you're born blessed doesn't mean anything," she shouted angrily, because underestimation always bothered her. Even more so when it came from someone who was only born with gifts. While she has to suffer to awaken the little eyes he may have out of desire, or break her hand to achieve the strength he was born with, equal or greater. "It means everything," he replied with a slight, mocking smile. "While only 2 from your planet could say they've entered a level close to ours, the rest would die at the hands of a sleeping baby of our race," he said, smiling arrogantly, proving his point. "That's not true. And I'll show you otherwise, damn it," she said angrily, starting to make hand seals that ended with one that Gino put in his mouth. "Fire style, great fireball jutsu." Absorbing the attack, the Otsutsuki looked at her with a raised eyebrow, saying, "That's all." And with those unspoken words, the girl made seals again, and a thunderous burst of lightning erupted in her hand. "Raikiri-senban." With a swung of her hand, thousands of lightning needles shot toward Narushiki, who absorbed them back into her palm with her golden eye. Stopping flying, he stood in front of the girl and looked her in the eye. "Prove it. Don't let me down. I'll wait for you," he said, falling into a battle pose the girl knew as the soft palm. Placing himself in his own battle style known as Interceptor Fist, he activates his red eyes known as the Spinning Copying Eye, or more simply, Sharigan, to anticipate his enemy's movements, even before they make them. "Try to hit me," he said as the girl launched herself at the Otsutsuki, who easily dodged and blocked the blows. Even with the girl seemingly reading his movements, he was still faster and managed to attack before the girl. "Narushiki, slow," he said to block her kick, but to his surprise the punch that was wrapped in chakra sent him flying, but he easily managed to do a somersault and land on his feet. "Mikoto, how about that?" he said arrogantly as he put chakra back into his fists, but was surprised to see that he couldn't even lift it. And with his Byakugan active, he smiled for having closed all his Tenkazu chakra points on his arm, and looking at the girl he smiled cruelly for something else. "Pain will be part of your life from now on, haha." Mikoto frowned. Back to the fight. The girl went back to the attack, but now her blows seemed stronger and Naruto could see that her Tenkazu were open, which confused him a bit. And giving a stronger blow than before to Narushiki, absurdly stronger than before, which makes me doubt where that mysterious strength of the girl came from. "Narushiki, come on, weren't you going to prove something? Now you just make my point clearer," he said, but this time he was pinned to the ground. Since he didn't seem to be damaged at all the other time, these blows were like simple teddy bear hugs for his nearly invulnerable Otsutsuki body. "I'll counterattack now," he said as now the one who went on the attack was him, and the difference became obvious when with a single palm strike to the stomach, The Uchiha girl flew out and crossed the entire training field to the other side. Not caring if the girl was okay or not, he began to shake the dust off his expensive outfit, and walking towards the girl, he saw her lying on the ground in pain, and as always his frown did not change. You only serve to clarify my point. No matter how much you train or strive, you don't have what it takes to be considered Otsutsuki, even with blood running through your veins. With that, he raised his hand toward the girl, and with a golden cricket, the young woman's few external and internal wounds began to heal, leaving her as good as new. He hated you, the young woman said, annoyed. He didn't like the fact that he had just been beaten up, and even less so that the same person was the one who had always insulted him and called him inferior. Narushiki, hatred is normal for you, that's why you're always down, he said calmly. The girl got up from the ground and looked at him seriously. The boy did the same but with an indifferent look and no interest in the girl. You have a visible chest. The girl blushed. Pervert! She screamed, covering her chest, which fortunately didn't reveal her nipple, but she could see a lot of flesh underneath, which embarrassed her even more. Glancing angrily at the Otsutsuki who continued to stare unperturbed, she frowned at him. Mikoto, you're a pervert, she said, annoyed. I've never seen your chest, and I'm not interested in something so insignificant, he said calmly, without any interest. And with those words, the Uchiha grew even angrier. How dare you! Have you never been polite? You don't say that to a woman! She shouted at Narushiki, who continued with a serious face. Narushiki, what a waste of time. He whispered to turn around and leave the field, leaving the girl who was shouting things at him behind. Ignoring the insults, the white-haired man entered the secondary street where it seemed there were only shinobi, from genin to jounin. Everyone here, which should prevent him from being attacked due to misunderstandings, or so he hoped. If the Hokage hadn't warned his shinobi about his accepted presence in the village, he could easily kill anyone who attacked him without a care in the world. Sigh. Again? Sighing in exhaustion, the horned boy grabbed a staff and, pulling the person holding it, smashed it in front of him, eliciting a groan of pain from the person. Didn't your Hokage tell you not to attack? He cut himself off when he saw who he attacked. It was one of the young men whose life he spared, more specifically the one with the geeky clothes and hat and brown skin. I'll let it go, but if you try it again I'll kill you, he finished with a serious look. That goes for you too, he said, and turning, he looked to the side where the other boys he knocked out a few hours ago in the other village were. Perhaps they attacked him because they thought he had infiltrated without permission, or that at least they had returned to warn their Hokage about him and attacked him on the way. Narushiki, humans really are just as described, evolved animals, he said, clicking his teeth in annoyance. If this is what the 4 years he spent here would be like, it would be better to just destroy the entire village and kill everyone so there will be less trouble in the future. He continued on his way until something caught his attention. It was something he hadn't seen in over 2 millennia. It was a kind of cloud, but it was a pinkish color. It was also on a stick and was being sold by a man. This was a very famous candy throughout the cosmos. It was called cotton candy, and although he wouldn't say so, it caught his attention and was his favorite candy. Give me one, he said without emotion. And the man at the stand, surprised, did as requested, handing the strange man a cotton candy. Extraterrestrial? Ignoring the man's puzzled look, he took the pink mint cotton and started walking again, but the vendor called after him angrily. Hey you! It's not free, come pay. Naruto turned his gaze. No! His cold response frightened the man, but summoning courage or stupidity, he grabbed Naruto's right shoulder, forcing him to turn around. Pay now or I'll call the police. You can't just come here and steal because you want to, he said angrily, while Narushiki didn't seem to focus on him. 10 presences are about to arrive. It seems they're trying to find me. They've already circled this entire place 3 times. He thought, ignoring the man who, enraged to the limit, took the cotton candy from his hand and pathetically used it to hit him. He didn't feel it himself, though. Salesman, I told you to pay me, idiot. With that shout, the audience's attention turned to both of them, while Narushiki said nothing. Raising his index and middle fingers, he pointed them like a gun at the man who was confused, but when he saw the Otsutsuki's gaze he became scared. Trying to run, he tripped and fell in front of the white-haired man, who looked at him very seriously. "Die, trash!" With those words, a kind of chakra water needle appeared at the tip of his index finger, frightening the man even more. And out of fear, his pants began to wet me while the Otsutsuki's death glare remained on him. Without hesitation, he fired the attack, which, like butter, passed clean through the man's head. But this caused the surrounding villagers to go mad with murder. "Even more trouble! I'll kill you all, dash!" I don't finish because this time the 10 presences from before appeared, showing that they were the Anbus from a few hours ago, who have the mission of being with the boy while he is in Konoha until he leaves and trying to track his chakra. Trying is the key word since the Otsutsuki stopped his transformation his chakra disappeared. It's as if it had never existed, and that alerts them. They barely feel the other Otsutsuki why she still uses the transformation, leaving her chakra activated. "Anbu, Narushiki-sama, I've asked you not to make a scene. This time, you'll let it go because the civilian attacked first, but there won't be a second time," said the black-haired Anbu with a grown-up voice, proving to be a man. The Otsutsuki looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "Only address me like that when you can at least look me in the eye or at least not tremble," he replied coldly, and it was true the Anbu kept his gaze down in fear of the boy. It didn't help that he had the same appearance as the Otsutsuki who almost killed the 7th and destroyed the entire Chunin exam stadium like it was nothing. "It seems they don't remember that I'm not a prisoner, much less an assistant, for now, I'm their partner. Nothing more," he thought, turning around, leaving the Anbu behind, who disappeared from sight, returning to the shadows. With that, he left the body and the Anbu in place and continued on his peaceful way, a walk that had been disturbed several times. "Now what do you want?" Tony asked, slightly annoyed at the little patience the one who had with him. Turning to the chakra that followed him, he saw one of the girls he had almost killed earlier, hiding in a corner. Seeing that she'd been discovered, she came out from the corner, very red-faced and very embarrassed. Sorry, sir. I just saw you use a water jutsu earlier, and it interested me," she said, covering her mouth with her hair out of embarrassment. The boy looked at her and smiled strangely. Identical to Mari when I first met her, he thought, seeing the striking similarity in their attitude. Someone clumsy and shy, although with him that attitude had to change since someone clumsy wouldn't help him much. "Call me Narushiki, don't call me sir," she said, walking back, confused. The girl walked behind Narushiki, and he noticed. "Narushiki, do you want something?" I asked. The girl blushed. "Well, I wanted to know where you learned that water jutsu. It's a somewhat advanced and interesting technique for me," she said, very nervous about talking to the Otsutsuki. Narushiki looked at her disinterestedly and replied. "From you," he replied, returning his gaze to the road. At his response, the girl went blank for a few seconds. "What do you mean by that?" "I learned it from you in your previous attack, the water laser," he said, stopping and turning to look at the girl, who was surprised by what he said. But both techniques are different. One is a laser of a large amount of water, and the other is a single drop. How did he manage to make one inspired by the other?" she asked in surprise. Doing something like that was very difficult for any shinobi. "Narushiki, I'm known for being able to decipher techniques after seeing them once. It's something I've always done, don't think too hard about it," he said calmly. The girl nodded thoughtfully with a crazy idea she had in her mind. "See, can you teach me?" she asked nervously, which only worsened when the boy's questioning gaze fell on her. She covered her face with her 2 pigtails out of embarrassment. "Yes," he said, sighing. He would only do it to see if he could learn something more from the girl. He could say that she had some more techniques in store, even when this ninjutsu did not compare to his shinjutsu. But with his great gift in techniques he could give that divine touch to mortal techniques. Somewhere else. Narushiki raised his hand, and a bullet of water shot out, easily piercing the wood of a distant tree. It continued its course, cleanly passing through more trees, leaving the small gap, less than 9 millimeters wide, in each tree in a straight line, for more than 20 meters. Beside her, the girl named Namida tried to do the same, but despite concentrating too hard on the drop of water, it ended up exploding in her face, causing her to fall to the ground. Watching the young woman's failure, the Otsutsuki spoke. "You're focusing too much on its mass. What's truly important is its density. The more you compress that drop of water, the more force it will have, and the better it will penetrate the target." The girl nodded nervously. And trying again what the Otsutsuki said, and it started to work, the 15mm drop of water became a drop smaller than 10mm, but when it was shot, it didn't take long to fall to the ground uselessly. Blanking out the Otsutsuki, Namida was extremely embarrassed by her embarrassing mistake in front of the Otsutsuki. "You still need to add the exit acceleration. If it doesn't come out fast enough, it won't have the momentum to travel more than 20 meters per second," he said, raising his hand again. This time, instead of a drop of water, a water laser shot out from the drop on his finger, and the laser cut through all the trees like butter. And with a wave of the hand, many trees fell through a clean cut in their trunks courtesy of the water laser. No matter how different they look, techniques must be composed of a logical equation and have at least a few laws. There are some that skip one or another concept of reality, but that doesn't mean they do it in all aspects, so sometimes you have to use simple equations," he explained, stopping firing his laser water gun. The girl nodded. "It's the same as fire techniques. You heat the chakra in your lungs, transforming it into a super hot plasma that, when combined with external oxygen, creates the flames that shoot out," the girl said, thinking of a class on the element. The Uzumaki thought about this and smiled. Fire techniques would be a good addition to his repertoire. "You're right. Just take that logic and apply it to your water techniques." "Namida, technically, I already know how to do that. When I use my water technique, I moisten my chakra until it becomes liquid and then I push it out with the force of my chakra," she said thoughtfully, but at that moment something came to her mind and Narushiki nodded. "Then I just have to put the same throwing force as I did with my lungs, only this time outside of them using a chakra boost," he said, happy to discover the technique used in most water jutsu that are external. Although he realized the scandal, he was even more embarrassed for bothering or believing he bothered the boy next to him, who remained impassive. "Narushiki, you've understood," said the Otsutsuki, assisting. Leaving aside her shame, the girl tried again, returning to the steps from before, activating the technique and compressing the drop of water, which went from more than 20mm to 8mm with a rough shot. The girl was thrown backward, falling on her back, and the compressed drop of water shot out at an absurd speed, piercing all the trees. "You got it right this time, but next time try to make the raw thrust smoother, unless it's more than one enemy and they're in a row or a great distance apart. Something this powerful is a waste of chakra," he said, lifting the girl, giving her his hand. But due to his clumsiness, he tripped over a rock and fell in front of Narushiki, falling into his arms. Unfazed, the Otsutsuki took her in his arms, causing the young woman to blush. She stood up and began to apologize foolishly, bowing hastily. "No matter, leave it like that," she said, and began to leave the training grounds. He learned some of the techniques of water and fire, so he already had the material to create powerful shinjutsu from these elements, with his great comprehension ability. While the Otsutsuki was thinking this, the girl watched him walk away. But out of embarrassment at what had just happened, she stayed still and didn't say the goodbye she so desperately wanted to say. "See you later, brat." She was surprised to receive a farewell from the Otsutsuki, who, while still walking, raised his hand in farewell without any personal interest. Copying his farewell, the girl did the same while whispering her goodbye. "Goodbye, Narushiki-san." Chapter 5. Naruto could be seen. The Otsutsuki had his human appearance with touch-ups. His hair was now two-toned, brown and white. He had his Otsutsuki battle kimono, only the sleeves were shorter, revealing his palms. His age was 15 to 16, and his eyes still showed the Bakugan, being just as beautiful and bright. While meditating, the Otsutsuki seemed to be completely calm, or so it seemed, since he wasn't really. He was angry. It had been a long time since he made his deal with the Hokage, and he was bored. Normally, it would have decimated a population somewhere in the universe, but the time difference was strange. It refers to the difference in location in the universe. I need something to do, he thought, abandoning his meditation practice. While leaning on his palm, he considered the options, which really weren't many. Leaving and committing genocide was an impossible option because of how stupid it would be to leave the world for so long when his chakra was acting strangely lately. He could get away with it. Option number 2 was to go to the moon with Yuma, Mari, and the blind man. But he was there last month, and it was too boring for his liking there. The last option is to go with the fox and find fun on his inferior missions. Sighing, he smiled in a psychopathic manner. Even though he was older to humans, to the Otsutsuki he was literally a child entering adolescence. His long lifespan meant that what humans considered a year was only a millennium for them. What was that? Oh yeah, birthday. Mine's almost here, he thought, looking at his hand where he had nothing on it, his dojutsu hidden in the illusion. Although it seemed uncomfortable to him because of how idiotic it was to hide, but Mari thought it was better to be among them and he accepted it, although he didn't care much. Stopping thinking about nonsense, the Otsutsuki began flying at high speeds toward the Hokage tower. Arriving in a millisecond, the brown-haired man with white tips looked down at the tower. Even with this illusion, they can no longer sense my chakra because of my natural gift of Otsutsuki, he thought, descending in his flight. He landed in front of the great tower and, ignoring everyone around him, entered. In the Hokage office. Entering the office not seeing the counselor, the Pearl Eye opened the door that was the Hokage's office and looked inside to see himself the 7th Hokage and his counselor named Shikamaru if he remembers correctly. Hokage. I speak calmly, the closest thing to a greeting I could give to someone of an inferior race like humans. Otsutsuki. He received his answer from the counselor, but simply ignored him because it would be idiotic to listen to someone like the man. I'm bored, he said, arms crossed, causing both adults to sweat droplets at his sudden words. Menma, really? I whisper through a bead of sweat. Yeah, in short, I want something to do, preferably outside the village. I want a mission to distract me for now. The harder it is and the longer it will last, the longer I'm away, he said with a serious face. While inside he just wanted to get it over with, he hated it when he had to show that he was still considered a child within his race, seeing that even as young as 13, humans were considered adults, and he himself, at almost 17 millennia old, was barely a teenager. The same goes for other races, where they were adults at 18 or 20 years old. Within their own race, they were nothing more than small children who didn't even have the right to express their opinion, while among other races, by the age of 20, they were already completely independent. Menma, well, this is good for both of us, since I have a threat my ninjas probably couldn't handle. Or not the ones available, but back to the topic. I might have the perfect mission for you, but you'll have to go with several others to make sure you don't do anything. Frowning, Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Hokage but sighed nonetheless. I'll be under your rules for now since I'm bored, he replied, crossing his arms and closing his eyes to wait. He leaned against the wall, silently ordering Menma to his advisor to retreat and gather the available equipment. There wasn't much of it, to be honest, as the newly discovered organization gave them no time to be alert. Some time later. Entering the room, 3 teams could be seen training, and Naruto, who barely knew any of those teams, raised an eyebrow at the others. Dude, I heard you're finally sending us on an A-rank mission. Excited, a blond man very similar to the Hokage entered first and excitedly stood in front of the desk. This was Boruto Uzumaki, son of Menma Uzumaki himself, the eldest of his 2 biological brothers and the middle of his 3 children, one of whom was adopted. Idiot! A scream was heard as a blow slammed the mini Uzumaki against the wall, while a short-haired brunette entered behind her companion. This was, if I remembered correctly, the sister of the annoying Uchiha. Sarada, Mikoto's twin sister but younger. Behind her, a blue-haired boy with very light skin approaching his clan's level, entered the boy named Mitsuki. Son of a trader or something like that, he never got to delve into that part of his story. Behind them, a dark-haired man entered. He was a possibly 25-year-old adult named Konohamaru Sarutobi, who was either the grandson or great-grandson of someone more famous from the past or something similar. Mom, why is Boruto such an idiot? Does it run in the family? Since the seventh idiot is sometimes, does that mean his children will be idiots too, or? Before he could finish his last question, he received a light blow to the head. Leave that alone, Saori, said the woman he'd bumped into earlier, the woman who was still wearing the same outfit she'd had back then. I'm sorry, Mom. The words came from the mouth of a redhead with long hair held back by an earring. She was wearing a long-sleeved blue jacket with white bell-bottom pants, which were tapered at the bottom and fitted at the waist. She was also wearing high heels that seemed uncomfortable to the Otsutsuki at first glance. But I didn't notice that discomfort in the unknown girl. At his side was Mikoto, who seemed to be looking at him with doubt. Remembering that the girl hadn't seen his new appearance, he decided to remain calm. Perhaps he'd have some peace if she didn't know about his current appearance. And among the latter there was someone who seemed to be a boy who looked very similar to the man people called the sixth Hokage. Perhaps a fan who would come along with it, since he looked exactly like the photo in the sixth Hokage's room. Behind them, the girls' team entered, where Namaida came with her teammates, and next to them the team's sensei, whom Naruto noticed was one of Princess Kaguya's direct hybrids. A Hyuga, Hanabi Hyuga if it wasn't mistaken. Seventh, did he call me? Asked a boy who made Naruto mentally smile. The boy was physically about her age, about 16 years old, with black hair and blonde shadows. He had dark blue eyes and a Roman numeral 9 below his left eye. His name was Kawaki, the adopted son of the Uzumaki Hokage and apparently the receptacle for Ishiki. Menma, yes, Kawaki, you see, I wanted you to enter the shinobi world. And while this isn't a test or an official mission, it will be an adventure for you. You'll be able to tell me how you like the diet after that. How is it? Kawaki, that's annoying, but it's okay. I'll go on this mission, it might be interesting, he said, looking at the Hokage, who nodded. Before anyone could speak, Konohamaru decided to ask one of his fears about the mission. If the mission is A rank, I should have assumed we'd have several reinforcements, right? He asked, directly at the Hokage. He sighed because he knew this would happen. For now, we have two. The first should be on his way here, and you've either met or heard of the second, he said with a smile, pointing at the disguised Otsutsuki. That one? He's not old by any means, but he's almost Kawaki's age, and he couldn't handle an A-rank mission alone, he said, staring at Naruto, who still had his eyes closed. But to correct him, a strong blow made him scream in pain. Idiot! He was chosen by the Hokage. It's obvious he must be strong enough, he scolded his partner. Although she wasn't entirely sure herself, the teenager didn't look like someone who trained. His skin was too smooth and thin that he should never have been beaten. He didn't have a ninja bandana, and he didn't look like much at first glance. His teachings told him that he was someone strong and he shouldn't underestimate him, but that was something his eyes wouldn't let him accept because of the many flaws he could see in the teenager, like someone who never fought. What are you looking at me for? The simple question froze Sarada as she saw lavender eyes clash with her black eyes, feeling very scared by the cold gaze of what she assumed was a Hyuga. The problem was quickly solved. A Hyuga? I've never seen one in the clan, and Grandpa didn't tell me a boy my age was a ninja, Boruto thought, looking into Naruto's eyes. Those Byakugan eyes scared him, though, but he didn't know why. Hanabi, okay, Hokage. Could you explain the mission and its specifics? He asked, trying to draw everyone's attention away from the boy, who had guessed who he was and didn't like the idea of his companion. Or so he thought, since someone really didn't take their special eyes off the Otsutsuki who bullied his younger sister. It's simple. Although it could be an S-rank mission if the information is entirely true. For now, we only know that a criminal group emerged in the Rain Village almost 2 years ago. That's wait. In the Rain Village, wouldn't that be? Menma nodded. Yes, a new Akatsuki. It's not confirmed yet, but we know they already have the village in their hands, so we must wrest that control away from them, or they'll start battles that would kill innocent people. For now, they're all renegades, but without rank. Although, being a new Akatsuki, I don't want to take any risks, and I'll give them that mission, even if they all turn out to be lies. He explained calmly, crossing his hands. Saya, that's a bit dangerous for Genin. I just hope it's something peaceful, said the red-haired mother in a low voice, while her daughter seemed to be curious about some uninteresting things. So take care. Although I'd say come back if things get tough, there will be several of Konoha's strongest ninja there. So I won't worry, he said, smiling, looking at the sensei, who smiled at the Hokage's kind emotional support. Well, you're fired. You can go, Shikamaru said as the teams prepared to leave, but before that, Mikoto, not wanting to hide it, she walked straight up to Naruto, who looked at her in doubt about what the Uchiha wanted. Mikoto, it's you, isn't it? The Otsutsuki blinked, seemingly unfazed, which was true. Don't act like an idiot, your eyes are identical even with a new look, she said, crossing her arms with a smile, having spotted the Otsutsuki. But that smile fell when he saw that the Otsutsuki still remained unresponsive. And knowing what to do, she lassoed a blow to the boy. A split second later, she found herself face down, falling from a wall to the ground. She hit her head hard and was quickly attended to by her younger sister. Sister! I knew it, you're the blessed idiot. Naruto sighed at what the girl wanted to do. Useless, he whispered as he walked to the exit of the room. However, before leaving, he looked at the girl still on the floor and offered his hand to help her up. Suddenly kind? Did you already have manners classes or something? He said mockingly as he stood in front of Naruto. Naruto then left the room, leaving the teachers, who confirmed their suspicions about who the young man was, and the students, where only a few understood what had happened. Being one of these Namaida, she was a little surprised and at the same time unconsciously saddened. Has his appearance changed? He seems to get along very well with Mikoto-san? Stopping her thoughts, the girl came back to her senses when she noticed that they were already leaving. Fine, we'll do our best on this mission, Konohamaru said calmly, raising a hand, and the team formed by the fusion of several teams seemed to know what that signal was. Team. In 10 minutes, at the Konoha Gate on the way to the Rain Village. Elsewhere, the Otsutsuki could be seen walking calmly down the village's main street. He knew who the reinforcements were next to him and felt them around. Excited about our mission? The voice, which was exactly what the Otsutsuki wanted to hear, made the celestial being turn to the side, where it had always been. Walking carefree was the daughter of the best medical ninja and the legendary teacher of the 7th Hokage, the daughter of 2 Sannin and bearing the name of a powerful Uzumaki. Senja Myth. I hope you're not a nuisance. It was her response to his words. And although she didn't seem to understand his words, the girl quickly began to laugh, mistaking his threat for a joke. And that was evident when he placed his hand around her neck in confidence, though he ignored it because of how unimportant it was right now. Whatever you say, like snow. He's just ready for the journey, and he's carrying food or something because it will be necessary. Naruto, I don't need it, chakra is my food, he replied calmly. While raising his hand, the chakra around him swirled and transformed into small pills with a light red color. This indicated their lack of energy, as the darker the color, the more powerful the seed. Although the same strength is always better than simple seeds, as was their current way of eating. Myth, that's good, but still bring some clothes or something useful. Having to pay for something from someone else is annoying on missions and can create too much tension during the mission, he said, smiling as he stopped and turned around, walking back to the Hokage Tower. Naruto, who cares? Myth, don't forget, yes, it's 10 minutes. Naruto, I know. 10 minutes at the gate on the way to that village, I know. The Otsutsuki, leaving his human form, quickly changed into his Narashiki form and began to float over the village, smiling. Very silly, this village won't be as bright and beautiful. It wasn't exactly a threat or a bet, but a prediction. Let's see what they do, he thought, flying at high speeds toward the moon, going at a considerable speed so as not to catch fire as they exited the atmosphere at high speeds. Chapter 6. Naruto, Mito, and Sarada could be seen waiting alongside Team 16 and their sensei. Naruto was floating. He'd been standing for over 5 minutes, and his feet were starting to hurt. What took you so long? You should have been here 5 minutes ago. Don't bother Winnie-san, it's probably Boruto's fault. He always drags Konohamaru-sensei and Mitsuki into his problems, Sarada said to her sister, and then clenched her fist, annoyed for thinking about Boruto. The half-brown-haired, half-white-haired man just sighed, a little annoyed. Shouldn't you two be watching what they're doing? I'm already bored, said the slightly annoyed Senju, wearing a different outfit. Her once loose hair was now in a ponytail, while two bangs fell to each side of her face, adorning her cute face next to the purple diamond. Her shirt was the same, except she had two black fingerless gloves and a coat around her waist over her pants, which were now black with a white stripe on each side, and she still had her combat heels. Naruto, this is already bothered. Naruto, this is already annoying, he thought, crossing his arms. Turning his gaze, he saw Team 15 arrive alongside Kavaki, whom he looked at with doubt. A mission where they could die, the perfect scenario for something to happen to Ishiki's vessel that would lead to his death. Hello? Naruto turned his gaze to the Namida and greeted her with an imperceptible smile, which the girl returned. Hello? He said in a tone that seemed dry, but it was the kindest thing the Otsutsuki would show a mortal for now. In the distance, Mikoto, who was talking calmly with her sister, watched their interaction with a frown. Wani-san, what are you seeing? Sarada asked, looking at the same thing as her sister. When she saw Namida next to Naruto, she turned to look at her sister. Otsutsuki? Don't tell me you like it, she whispered in surprise when she received a blow to the head from her sister. Don't talk nonsense, Sarada. It's clear you don't. Sarada, if you say so, she said doubtfully. Mom, did you fight the ancient Akatsuki? I'm asking because you're from the same generation as the seventh. Saya's daughter, Saori, spoke up. Well, I fought when the false leader invaded the village. Although no one managed to defeat one besides the sixth Hokage and Konohamaru, we did give everything we had to win until the seventh arrived. He told his daughter, who nodded. And how strong was the false leader? I asked, interested. A lot. His technique was based on the Rakuta Sanin's dojutsu, the Rinnegan, he said thoughtfully, recalling the little they learned about the man who technically killed her. His technique was based on dividing his 6 abilities into corpses, and having them go into battle for him while he controlled them. The techniques must have been pretty tough if they gave him so much trouble until the 7th, she said in amazement. Saya, yes, even the 7th had problems with all 6 at once, although he finished them all off. I speak remembering a young Menma with a black cape and red flames on his back fighting against 6 people with black robes and red nuts with orange hair and piercings all over their faces and bodies. Naruto, the Rinnegan was always an interesting dojutsu. No matter how many Otsutsuki had it, I always had something new for us, said Naruto to the back of the mother, who turned to look at him. Saya, what do you want? Naruto, nothing. Your shinobi are taking too long. I have nothing to do while they come, he said, pulling a tick off the older redhead, who got angry. Does he think they're his entertainment? The younger redhead looked doubtfully at the human-like Otsutsuki. Are you an Otsutsuki? Like the ones who invaded the Chunin requests? She asked with a doubtful, innocent look. Naruto looked at Saori with a raised eyebrow because that was so obvious. But she simply answered. Yes, they were my relatives. My father and grandfather, to be exact, he said, and Saori was surprised. Saori, does that mean you're as strong as them? I asked excitedly. Meeting strong beings always resulted in fascinating information, like techniques or adventures. Yes, he summarized briefly. The young woman's gaze told him that wouldn't be enough, though, and he sighed as he continued. Naruto, he was stronger than my father and grandfather separately, although I couldn't tell you now, he said calmly, remembering the time he was proclaimed as one of the nobility for his power, surpassing his father's upper-class rank. Meanwhile, Saya was surprised by what Otsutsuki had said, which, if true, meant that it would be an even bigger problem. When she was about to say something, the remaining members of Team 7 appeared at the door, while Mitsuki and Boruto looked exhausted. Guys, you won't believe what happened to us. Mitsuki and I were coming here when a thief tried to rob a nearby store, and Mitsuki and I tried to stop him, but the thief turned out to be a renegade infiltrator. At that moment, Sensei arrived and "Walk and shut up," Mikoto said, cutting off the Uzumaki's words. Starting to walk along with the others, while Sarada pulled his ear and dragged him with the others, and his sensei Konohamaru only sweated a drop at the situation. Naruto followed the path with everyone, while on each side were Mito and Saori. Further behind were the sensei with Sarada and Team 15, and behind were those from Team 7 talking to each other. Some time later, after a few minutes of walking at a normal pace, the village was no longer in plain sight, and even a conventional Byakugan couldn't see it. This told the ninja internally that in a few kilometers, they would begin the shinobi pace to reach their goal as quickly as possible. While in the same position as at the beginning of the journey, Team 7 was still talking to each other. "Boruto, hey Kawaki, do you trust that Otsutsuki?" he asked doubtfully while casually putting his hands on his head. The two-toned boy looked at the Otsutsuki ahead with narrowed eyes. "Kawaki, not really. But the 7 said it would only be for 4 years, until they managed to finish off an Ishiki or something. Then he would have to leave," he said with his hands in his pockets. Although he didn't really trust the Otsutsuki's word, he knew the Hokage could finish him off if he didn't comply. While Naruto was listening to the conversation, he smiled like a psychopath. "You know nothing, kid, nothing," he thought, coming up with a good plan to kill the boy. But at that moment, Saori looked at his face and was visibly confused by the Otsutsuki's unusual smile. "Saori, why do you smile like a psychopath? Is it normal for you? Do you do it a lot, or is it because of some illness?" the redhead asked, making Naruto look up at the sky while beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Myth, Saori. You're doing it again, asking so many questions," the blonde said to the girl, who scratched her head in embarrassment. "She even asked me how you asked so many questions in a single second." Naruto, with his cold face, just looked at Mito and spoke. "Where are we going?" Mito looked at him doubtfully. "Is the serious gentleman impatient?" Naruto just stood with his face cold before the smile of his partner, who was right. He could look cold, but he used to be very impatient and immature, but he was barely a teenager, or at least he was in the culture of his race. Mito, noticing the boy's gaze, burst out laughing. "I was just joking," he said, patting the Otsutsuki on the back, who rolled his eyes at the blonde's trust in him. If they had spoken more than 5 times this month, it would be exaggerated, and yet it seems like she thinks he's her friend or something like that. "Myth, we are heading towards the Rain Village in the Land of Water. It is a 1-week walk and 3 hours at Jounin pace, but since there are genin it would be too long," he thought, and leaving his transformation, he went to his true form that made some genin doubt and alerted the sensei. While Boruto frowned at the appearance of the young man in front of him, he was too similar to Momoshiki for his personal taste. The Otsutsuki raised his hand, where his crimson-red Rinnegan shone brightly, and a portal opened where both Naruto and Saori and Mira entered unexpectedly. Then the portal closed. "But what?" Saya was alarmed to see her daughter had crossed the portal. "That damn Otsutsuki kidnapped them. He knew we should have been given so much freedom," the redhead said, annoyed. Her hatred for the race itself didn't prevent her from even analyzing the situation before cursing the young millennial. Meanwhile, Hanabi, who had activated her Byakugan, searched the 18 kilometers away that her eyes could reach. But unfortunately, nothing was in sight. "It's not close. It must be at least 20 kilometers away," she said, deactivating her eyes. "But where did he take her? That portal could have been anywhere in the world, or galaxy, or universe," Konohamaru said thoughtfully, worried about what might happen. While the genin were talking amongst themselves. "I told you we shouldn't trust him. He was too cooperative to be true," Boruto said, annoyed, while behind Mikoto she was thoughtful about the loose ends. He had heard the Otsutsuki's conversation with the 2 girls and noticed something in all of that. "Wait a second, because before taking them, he asked where the Rain Village is and how long it would take to get there," I asked, while both the genin and the sensei looked blank at what that meant. Konohamaru: "The portal was going to the Rain Village. That means he just went ahead. Hee. I think we made too many assumptions ahead of time," he said nervously. And Saya, who didn't want to admit they weren't bad, crossed her arms. I still say we shouldn't trust them, she said in a whisper that betrayed her embarrassment at being the one who cursed the boy the most before knowing the truth. Mitsuki, that still doesn't mean they went ahead. Isn't it dangerous for them to be in the village without us? The enemy could kill them, and that would put us at a disadvantage. Orochimaru's son calmly wrote. That's true. Losing some of the team before starting the mission would make it more difficult. It would be best to arrive before anything important happens. The samurai from the all-female team said, while Namaida nodded, wanting to help the Otsutsuki before something bad happened. Even though he was the strongest, the Rain village was known for its cruel and deceitful techniques. Konohamaru, although it's risky, we'll all go at Jounin pace. If any Jinin tires on the ogre path, I'll carry them, and we'll rotate shifts, so we can arrive in record time. He said, and everyone nodded. And they began the journey. The Genin as well as the Jounin accelerated at maximum speed, wanting to reach the main country of another continent in a minimum of 2 hours or 1 if it was enough. With Naruto, Saori and Mito. The trio could be seen crossing the portal, ending up in front of a village flooded by seemingly endless rain. Even at 2 p.m., the sky was dark from the gigantic cloud that covered the entire village and thousands of miles beyond as far as the eye could see. For someone to cover all this with a cloud, he must have had a lot of chakra. Saori, what are we doing here? He asked with visible doubt, while turning to look around. A minute ago, he was changing cars on the nearest highway to the Land of Rain, and now he was very close to the Land of Rain. Something that made no sense to him. What did you do, Snowflake? The Senju asked doubtfully, looking at the village where their mission would take place. Obviously, he teleported them with him. He just wanted to know the reason why he did it, or what for. If he has reasons, of course. Naruto, I was planning on coming alone. I didn't think you guys were too close. It must have been because I was bored, he said, not really caring. He just wanted to get rid of his boredom and learn new techniques. It was the only fun thing on this planet. And began walking toward the rainy village. Even when he got wet, the Otsutsuki remained unfazed and calm. Without saying anything, the two girls followed him because it was their only viable option. The others, at top speed, would barely make it to the Genin in 5 hours. And staying underwater for that long would be asking for illness. Myth, and where are we going? I asked as I entered the village. Saori, at her side, followed her, looking interested in the whole place, which was different from what she expected of a ninja village. She had never been here before, and she found it interesting to see a village like this, which was said to have once been led by the false leader of Akatsuki. Saori, hey Mito. Were you in the war? She asked doubtfully, looking at the surroundings, which were abnormally large buildings, while walking next to the Senju, who was walking next to the Otsutsuki in turn. Myth, no. I was barely 3 months old when that happened, he replied, unconcerned. Wow. Does that mean you were captured in the infinite genjutsu? I asked, wanting to know as much as possible about the war. Books about it usually hide too much from people who weren't there. Myth, something like that. I don't remember because I was just a kid. But I think so, or it must have been like that, based on simple logic. Naruto. Infinite genjutsu? He thought, listening intently to the conversation. Some technique or something similar? Naruto, let's get this way. The rain's bothering me now, he said, stopping at a tent as all his clothes began to glow red and begin to dry. Myth. So what do we do when it rains? Stand still? Asked the miners. He stopped next to the Otsutsuki and put the youngest in front of them. The girls shouldn't be in the back or they could kidnap her if they noticed. The Otsutsuki didn't reply, his face remaining cold and serious. What's he trying to do? The Otsutsuki thought, looking to the side with a noticeable frown. The boy decided to leave him aside to answer. You can continue if you want. We're not together after all. Saori, technically yes. It's a mission for everyone, after all, she said, and Naruto just sighed. Humans are difficult to deal with in all areas. Whatever you say, he said, and a girl who appeared to be about 10 years old walked in front of him. When her green eyes met his, he narrowed his eyes. Her eyes seemed filled with sadness, And although he didn't really care about anything, he saw something else in the girl. He saw her future. I'm seeing the future again without activating my Byakugan. This is already very tedious, he said, annoyed. This started a few centuries ago, and it seemed annoying to him. From what he knows, it might simply be because he was already entering adulthood. He was almost 17 millennia old, and he'd turn that age in 3 years. That would already make him a teenager within the clan, and should increase his power to a new level. That's why he wanted to eat his father before then. Or his power would grow so great that consuming his father would be unnecessary, and while that would be good for some, for him it's the same as leaving a loose end that would only cause him problems within the clan. After all, his father is almost a traitor. All that's left is for him to go and say it within the clan. Being known as the son of a traitor wasn't the fame he wanted right now. Saori, does your head hurt? She asked, seeing Naruto holding his head lightly. The Otsutsuki shook his head slightly, not answering the question and keeping his face cold. Myth, and when will we start walking? When the rain stopped, he replied without interest. Mito looked at him, and sweat dropped at what the boy didn't know. You know why it's called the Rain Village, right? The Otsutsuki sighed for the 10th time to calm his angry impulses. And understanding what the Senju wanted to tell him, the boy sighed again, but this time he stopped to go out from under the tent. Naruto, okay. We continue, he said, and left the tent to start walking through the rainy black sky. As he walked, his clothes could be seen illuminating slightly in red light as they dried, while also getting wet, causing a lot of steam to come out of his clothes. Myth, you're going to be like this all day? That shit's annoying, I asked, moving the steam away from his face. The Otsutsuki did not respond. Following the path but lowering his intensity, the Otsutsuki looked to the side and narrowed his eyes. Again? He thought, squinting, knowing it wasn't a coincidence. At that moment, a girl who appeared to be 6 years old passed by him and collided slightly with him. The girl, losing her balance, was about to stumble, but was held by Saori before falling. Saori, you should be more careful, she said with a calm smile. I am sorry, miss. You too, sir, he said, looking at Naruto and Saori. Saori just gave a tender giggle and shook her head. Don't worry. We're both fine, she said, pointing at Naruto. Don't pay attention to him like that, grumpy face. It's just the rain. The Otsutsuki didn't flinch. Why are you standing in the rain? That might give you a cold. You should go with your parents, little one, Saori said, and the girl began to cry. I don't have parents. I lost them 2 years ago. Saori seemed embarrassed by his words. I'm sorry for stirring up bad memories. But you should still go. The rain isn't good for you, she said, smiling to calm the girl's crying. And it seemed to work. Stopping crying, the girl smiled a little happier. Thank you, miss, she said happily and began to walk, but to her and Saori's surprise, the girl couldn't move forward. No matter how many steps she took, she stayed in the same place. Mito, Naruto, leave the girl alone, Mito said, annoyed with Naruto, who was the one stopping the brunette from moving forward. I will. When I return what I took, he said seriously, looking at the young woman, who became nervous. What are you talking about? The girl hasn't done anything, she said, annoyed. Naruto didn't say anything, but using his purple Rinnegan on his palm, he made the girl begin to float, and a small cream-colored purse fell out of her pocket, surprising Saori because it was hers. Hey! Because you have my purse, she said, annoyed, looking at the girl with a serious look, or so it would be if she didn't have a pout adorning her princess face. I grab it when I hug you. I try to grab mine when it collides with me, he said, looking at the floating girl, remembering when he felt his scroll, which he used for his personal belongings, almost fall out. You're a shinobi and you didn't realize it? Pathetic, he said, looking at Saori, who got angry. I'm not pathetic. I'm just shifting the weight of my bag onto his own. It was obvious he wouldn't notice, she said, defending herself while crossing her arms angrily. Meanwhile, Mita looked at the girl who looked like she was about to cry. Naruto saw this too, but paid no attention. Crying won't help you right now. You won't get through this time. Mito ignored the Otsutsuki's words and smiled at the girl. Don't worry, we won't hurt you, she said reassuringly. Naruto, put her down. She didn't mean to do that, I can assure you, she said, looking at the Otsutsuki, who didn't seem to hear or pay attention to her. Raising his hand, Naruto was going to bring it down to slam the girl into the ground, but he stopped when, dropping the girl, he raised his hand in front of him, stopping some kunai that were coming in his direction. Surprise attack? How did I not feel her chakra? He thought, looking around for his attacker. Meanwhile, the girl, seeing that her role was fulfilled, got up and began to run, but once again, she was suspended from the ground and began to float. Once again, due to the purple Rinnegan of the adolescent Otsutsuki. You're not going anywhere, he said, causing the eye in his palm to glow, but this time yellow, and the girl to disappear. Myth, what did you do to him? He asked, on guard, looking for his attacker. I put her in a place she can't escape from, he said, and with a pulse of his chakra. Although less intense than before and with some discomfort, the boy could see over 50 kilometers away in his 359-degree radius. Or so it would seem, since he could barely see beyond 20 kilometers around him. No one's here, he whispered, annoyed. Perhaps they were around, but he couldn't see them in his current state. His unbalanced chakra was now affecting him. At least he knew going to a planet instead of this would have been worse for him. Myth, they must have escaped by now. I can't see anyone either, he said, stopping his finger from touching the ground as Saori made the finger sign. Although the chakra in the rain itself makes everything difficult, I can still tell there are no shinobi around for now, she said calmly, though with a raised eyebrow at Naruto's strange behavior. He tried to hide his poor posture and stood up as best he could. Is this strange? Why is the Otsutsuki wall so vulnerable? Chapter 7. Mito decided to let the matter go. Perhaps it was something in her head. The Otsutsuki couldn't possibly be weak overnight, right? I'm not going to stand up to the Hokage and then act so fragile. Bring the girl Naruto. We need to know what she knows about it. Mito put aside any suspicions about the Otsutsuki for now. Naruto raised his hand, and a portal appeared in a fragile and ambiguous form. Just as quickly as it appeared, it disappeared, leaving only an unconscious, sleeping girl in the shadows. She was pale, with a red nose and snowdrops adorning her hair. This surprised the group. What the hell? Where did you put it? A dimension with a frozen planet, where heat is scarce, so your lucky time passes more quickly there. Because if it were the other way around, what's a matter of seconds to you would freeze to death. Mito and Saori were surprised. The dimensions are different spacetimes, but they all have a balanced flow, right? So why is it different here? Naruto. I'll take your memories, since you can't give us the information we want, he said, bending down to the sleeping girl, perhaps accepting her death in the frigid place. Even though he'd only been there for a minute or two. And with a pulse of chakra, Naruto activated his Byakugan and looked the girl in the eyes, when thousands of things passed through his mind in a thousandth of a nanosecond. They were obvious memories of the girl, everything happened quickly, but the Otsutsuki managed to understand and process everything, where he saw the black-haired girl with two adults, her parents. He reasoned by the similar characteristics of the two adults. The girl lived peacefully with her parents until, when she was 5, a group of 7 appeared and took over the village. Anyone who tried to attack them died, and unfortunately for the girl, her parents did the same. All the memories after that event were of the girl living on the streets, learning to steal with clear mistakes at first. It was also of her being captured several times but released days later, until a few hours ago when she was caught, but released under the condition of distracting them while they attacked them. It was just a distraction, he said, turning his eyes off. Standing up, he left the brunette and started walking. Let's keep going, he said, and started, but none of the girls followed him. We can't leave her here, Mito said, grabbing the girl bridal style. If you want to take her, I don't mind. As long as it doesn't affect my entertainment. He thought the last thing as he continued walking. Memories gave him a glimpse of the eyes the leader of this new Akatsuki had, eyes he wanted for himself. I know where their hideout is. I'll go there. Saori, Wait, you can't go alone, she said, approaching Naruto, who just looked at her disinterestedly, even though they were more than a head apart in height. Myth, I didn't come on this mission to just sit around and do nothing, so I'm going too. Naruto smiled because this would help. Just don't interrupt, he said, and opened the portal again. Saori? Asked Mita, looking at the redhead. The girl thought about it. My Oka-san would say no, but she's not here, so it's okay. She looked at the portal, a little nervous. Changing places from point A to point B suddenly was always risky, but she had no choice. Let's go! Myth, we're ready, he said, smiling. And making a cross with his fingers, a copy of her appeared beside him. Naruto stared at the technique with his Byakugan, then turned his gaze back to the portal. He left his psychopathic thoughts behind and crossed the portal, followed by Mito and Saori again. This time, the trio ended up in a tower, the tallest of all, if the Senju might add. What are we going to do here? Myth asked, looking around. This is where they are down here, he said, looking down. Even though they've already sensed us from the rain, we can still attack, he said, placing his hand on the ground. Concentrating, the ground beneath his feet began to glow red-hot in the shape of a perfect circle. Just as the ground began to melt, he stomped down hard, shattering it into a perfect circle that caused Naruto to fall inward. Saori, we're not going to jump. Right. Mito smiled at her words. Right. Not caring about the question, the Senju jumped through the opening, leaving Saori alone. Which, she slammed her palm against her face. Really? Here we go. Straight to the enemy, she thought, remembering one of her mother's teachings, which was to never enter the enemy's lair if she already knew who you were going to and when. I let go of the annoyance and jumped too. What could go wrong, right? As she fell, she found herself in a dark place. Hello? She whispered doubtfully. Is anyone there? She asked, searching for something or someone in the darkness of the room, which had only the brightness of the rainy sky to illuminate it. Boo! The Uzumaki screamed in fear as she jumped in fright, when a light turned on and she saw Mito and Naruto looking at her from behind her. The Senju was laughing nonstop, while the Otsutsuki didn't care in the slightest about her previous reaction. Turning red, Saori was embarrassed by her jump and visibly screamed. You're too cruel, she said with a cute pout that didn't faze the duo of teenagers. Standing up, he saw the room lit by what looked like a white sphere of chakra, emitting a large wave of heat, and which was on the Otsutsuki's shoulder, probably a technique. He thought, ignoring that useless piece of information. He continued to stare at the room, and with hesitation, he looked at the floor with hesitation. What is this? He asked, to no one in particular. Naruto. Can you see the floor? The redhead asked suspiciously, looking questioningly at the ground, and then Naruto looked at her with a bit of interest. Myth, did you discover something? Saori, the floor. It looks sturdy, but you don't feel it as much as you see it. Naruto understood and looked at the ground. It's an illusion, he said, without even having used the Byakugan, although it's not like he could have for a few moments. His chakra was getting out of control at times and returning to the same level a few moments later. Making the ram seal, a large amount of the redhead's chakra flowed out, causing the ground to change into a similar, but older one. An illusion set up just to reveal the newer ground? Who would do that? Mito sneered, already knowing the reason for everything. Naruto, maybe to divert our attention from something more important. Like the explosives on that wall. It makes sense, said Saori without understanding what the Otsutsuki said, which was a drop as well as a myth. Although an instant after meditation, the Uzumaki's mind understood what she heard. Wait, what? Boom! A huge explosion rocked the tower, which was felt throughout the village, causing the entire upper section to be destroyed and several parts to fly out and express themselves throughout various parts of the Rain Village, starting a panic in the village. Meanwhile, Naruto, who was still in his place, shook off the smoke around him in annoyance. On top of taking this blast, I have to endure all this smoke, he thought, annoyed, as a strong wave of wind from the activation of his Byakugan cleared the area again. Hey idiot! Get me out of here! Naruto looked to his side, where both Mito and Saori were inside a sphere of pure chakra that protected them from the not-so-surprise attack. "If you want," he said, deactivating the dome, causing both girls to fall into the rubble. "Saori, that was a lot of paper bombs," she said, looking at the place. "Paper bombs are activated with chakra. The power of the explosion doesn't matter if the chakra of the person who placed it is very strong. And apparently the one who activated the paper bombs was strong. Myth, the question is how they got there so quickly," he wondered, looking around the room. "It's clear it wasn't when they sensed us on the roof. We were barely there for a few milliseconds," he said, looking at the completely devastated place. "They really wanted to kill them. Naruto, are you sure this was their lair?" The Otsutsuki shrugged. "This is where the girl was supposed to meet them to receive her pay after they killed us," he said, arms crossed, thinking for a moment. Saori was frightened by what the Otsutsuki had said. "Does that mean they were going to kill her by coming here?" "Mito, I doubt it. This place is impossible for non-shinobi to access. And even if that girl has good stealth, she couldn't possibly get up here. They knew we were going to find her and someone would get into her mind. This was meant for us from the start." "Fine. I'm leaving," said the Otsutsuki, stopping floating. "Myth, do you have a plan to find them?" "Naruto, no. But they do," he said as he opened a portal in the ground and the girls unexpectedly fell through it. Upon falling to the other side, they landed on the ground, right next to where the Senju clone and the sleeping girl were. "Let's go to one side of the village, they'll surely attack us there," Mito thought. "Let us be the ambushes so we can capture them." "Risky, but I like it," Chikano said, punching his fist in his palm with enthusiasm. He had questionable tastes, if you asked the Otsutsuki. "Saori, isn't that very dangerous?" "Don't worry, we'll defeat them." She spoke with self-confidence. "Besides, the others should be arriving by now. We've been here for almost 3 hours, so they must be close, especially since this idiot almost kidnapped us," she said, pointing at the Otsutsuki, who ignored her, looking around in different directions with his Byakugan active. Suddenly his appearance returned to the human appearance he had in the office, being the same light-skinned but human boy, with brown hair and white tips, with his Byakugan unfazed. "Naruto, over there," he said, pointing in a particular direction, where they appeared before when they came here. "Saori, why to the north?" I asked, looking at the seemingly desolate area in the distance. It didn't seem like an important or recurring place in the village. "Naruto, it's the closest place where the rain stops. They could use it to get out of the enemy's tracking range if necessary." "Myth, you?" Without interest in explaining, he did not respond. And instead, he raised his hand and reopened his portal, a space-time rift used by the Otsutsuki to travel from one lake to another. And once again, he fell through it. Without thinking, Mito jumped, and Saori did the same, following the duo. On the other side, Naruto looked at the area that was once water, and many more kilometers of water. Whoever cast this technique must have chakra. Covering so many square kilometers and having the power to move those clouds wasn't an easy thing to do in any sense. Maybe the leader is to blame. "Naruto, I'll take the leader, you guys see what you do with the others," he said without giving any explanation or reason. As he began to walk away from the group, he left the girls alone in the place, which seemed to have been destroyed for years. There was a lot of rubble and a broken wall in the distance. Pipelines protrude from what appeared to be a destroyed and abandoned dam. Naruto knew the leader would come for him, and that's what he wanted. If he really was the one with the technique, he would notice his strong presence moving away and Hiria would come for him first, as he was his biggest threat. Defeating and taking something from the man was all he needed now, and all the kindness he had to feign today would have been worth it. Mito didn't respond, and Saori got a little nervous. If he's going up against the leader, does that mean we're going up against the rest? Myth, it seems so. Saori, it seems so. There are more than 6B rank. The Uzumaki shouted worriedly. They were about to fight with 6 high-ranking ninja only with the help of her friend. Although Mito only smiled at her response. That's the best part, isn't it? he said, finishing adjusting his gloves for combat. Saori grew more worried and sighed. She should have rejected all this since they started proposing risky things. With Naruto. The Otsutsuki gazed at the rainy area, covering his body with a layer of chakra, preventing it from making contact with him. This way, he could leave its tracking range if necessary. Regardless of the level or plan he had for his enemy, he always had a way out. This was done mainly through special abilities that could neutralize him, or in case his chakra became destabilized again to the point where he couldn't use techniques. Naruto looked down into the water. Apparently, there were over 45 or even 50 kilometers of depth around here. Any normal person who went in there would die from the water pressure. You're easily distracted, aren't you? Naruto continued to stare out at the water, paying no attention to it, while standing beside him was a common black-haired man, wearing a ninja outfit and a torn IWA bandana. Even without seeing him, the Otsutsuki could sense the pressure the mere sight of the renegade had on his presence. While this wasn't due to power, the difference in level between them was galaxies away from comparison. The reason for this pressure was the eyes of the leader of the possible new Akatsuki. Interesting eyes you have there. A smile grew on Naruto's twisted face, his brow furrowing, but not in anger or rage. I'm interested in you, so let's get to the main course and show me what you have for me, my new gift. Interesting, you come to my village and challenge me just like that? I think we should show you how things work in the real ninja world, Leaf Boy. The man smirked as he held two kunai in each hand, using them to slash his wrists, letting the blood run into the water below them. Naruto watched this with interest. Use the water underneath to your advantage with this? The leader just snorted as, after making a seal, several blood dragons emerged and moved toward Naruto. Naruto ignored it, and raised his hand, still able to use his Otsutsuki abilities under the illusion of transformation. And using his absorption, he attempted to absorb the jutsu. Though he was surprised to see that none of the techniques seemed to subdue him, which brought a smile to his face. Jutsu that can't be absorbed? Interesting. Show me more Niken, and maybe I won't kill you in the process of assimilating you. The man didn't seem to understand, but he made a hand seal anyway, causing the dragons to rise into the sky and descend forcefully toward Naruto, who looked at this with a raised eyebrow. Fall of the Eight Heads. Naruto heard the name and snorted. Moving his hand, a stream of pure chakra exploded from his body in a perfect dome, destroying the dragons, while violently pushing away the rogue ninja, who was barely able to maintain his chakra control, which was almost completely altered for no apparent reason. The renegade was about to make hand seals, but before he could do one, he stopped. His eyes widened in horror as Naruto's cold, angry eyes stared back at him. The brown-haired boy's Byakugan, with white streaks, seemed to be like the moon itself on a cold night. Naruto. You're so useless. The words came out with a massive pressure that made the surroundings tremble with just his harsh words. Did I praise you for nothing? How do you intend to use such a mediocre trick against Narashiki Otsutsuki? The Otsutsuki smiled cruelly as he raised his hand, preparing something. We'll stop the experiment here. Now I'll show you a little punishment. The Uzumaki's smile widened as a purple sphere began to appear in Naruto's hand. It then grew and continued to grow until it covered the sky for miles around. The sphere would leave the village miles away like an ant, and it was also under the large sphere, which was a Baijidama. Made and recreated from the memories he drew from the Konoha cat girl, since her father had done something on a smaller scale upon his arrival. Naruto grinned maniacally. Okay, how about we get the fun started?
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.